This lad was likely in for a world of trouble. Yen Bei's expression remained indifferent. This meager aura seemed to him no more significant than that of an ant, and he couldn't be bothered to engage. With his current strength, he could easily dispatch not just a 7th layer Yuan spirit cultivator, but even a 7th layer of the 4th polar realm with a mere gesture. However, the cultivator appeared oblivious to this reality. Incensed by Yen Bei's blatant disregard, he fumed. "How dare you ignore me? You seek death." The cultivator, known for his volatile temperament, drew his long sword without hesitation and aimed to strike down the red-haired youth. Although they stood outside the city gates, where weapons were permitted, he would face no repercussions from the Yunlong kingdom for committing murder here. With a swift motion, a streak of azure sword energy surged towards Yen Bei's back. The crowd gasped, their eyes fixed on the assailant. Such ruthless intent. While the youth's intrusion was somewhat inappropriate, resorting to lethal force was excessive. To attempt to slay him with a single strike was shocking. Yet, in a moment that left everyone astounded, the red-haired youth suddenly halted, slowly turning to face his assailant. As he gazed upon the sweeping sword energy that surged toward him like a vibrant rainbow, there was not a flicker of emotion in his eyes. An invisible aura of oppression radiated from Yen Bei, causing the seemingly magnificent sword energy to dissipate as if confronted by a dreadful force. The cultivator witnessing this scene felt a tightening in his heart, his expression shifting to one of vigilance as he regarded Yen Bei. The assembled cultivators in line were equally astonished. The sword energy was formidable, yet this young man had employed some mysterious method, not even lifting a finger, to render it utterly formless. Suddenly, a faint crimson aura enveloped Yen Bei, and he slightly raised his head to look at the cultivator. A flash of red brilliance ignited within his pupils. Boom. The cultivator who had just attacked him underwent a drastic change in complexion, only to explode in a resounding blast, transforming into a mist of blood that rained down upon the ground. Hiss! At that moment, the crowd in line, as well as the guards stationed at the city, collectively inhaled sharply. Who was this youth, capable of causing a 7th-level spiritual cultivator to perish with but a single glance? The sheer power of such a gaze left them in awe. How terrifying must his direct attack be? Yet Yen Bei remained indifferent to the shock exhibited by those around him. His demeanor was one of utter apathy. Although he had embraced the path of slaughter, he was not a mindless fiend who indiscriminately took lives. The cultivator who had just drawn his sword had clearly harbored murderous intent, since he sought to kill him. It was only fitting that he met his end at Yen Bei's hands. Yen Bei turned and continued his advance toward the royal city. "You must pay 5 spirit stones to enter the royal city," one of the guards stammered, his lips trembling as he beheld Yen Bei, who towered over him. For reasons unknown, the young man's presence instilled a profound sense of dread within him. The other guard fared no better. His hands, gripping the halberd, quivered slightly as he struggled to swallow his fear. 5 spirit stones, Yen Bei scoffed, his gaze sharpening. Boom. An intangible authority erupted from him, sending both guards hurtling backwards. In an instant, Yen Bei vanished like a specter, a mere afterimage racing toward the palace. Mere moments later, the palace erupted with terrifying energy fluctuations. The entire populace of the royal city was gripped by fear, and they quickly deduced that the crimson-haired youth was none other than the legendary first among the younger generation of the Eastern Domain, Yen Bei. With the fall of King Yunlong, there was no one left in the kingdom capable of halting Yen Bei's advance. Any who dared to obstruct him would be met with a singular fate, death. Time passed, though it was difficult to ascertain how long. The palace had seemingly been purged, strewn with corpses. Yen Bei had also infiltrated the treasury of the Yunlong kingdom, seizing everything within and transporting it to the celestial blue continent. After Yen Bei departed from the Yunlong kingdom, the world was shaken. Countless individuals were left in astonishment. The once mighty Yunlong kingdom had been ruthlessly bloodied in a single day. The Dayan sacred land was incensed, even dispatching 3 semi-holy level powerhouses to capture the perpetrator responsible for the destruction of the Yunlong kingdom. Simultaneously, the Holy Lord personally issued a decree, indicating that the death of the half-saint Wu Bao was significantly related to Yen Bei, and a wanted notice has been dispatched. The destruction of the Yunlong kingdom is evident to all discerning eyes as the handiwork of Yen Bei. Although the 3 half-saint powerhouses ostensibly ventured forth to eliminate the murderer of the Yunlong kingdom, it is clear to everyone that the true target of the Dayan Holy Land was Yen Bei. The name of Yen Bei reverberated throughout the Eastern Domain once again in this manner. At this moment, however, Yen Bei had already departed from the Yunlong kingdom. Chapter 127, Fire Phoenix Valley. The imposter at the entrance of Fire Phoenix Valley. Yen Bei gazed at the majestic mountain ranges, lost in thought. Before even stepping inside, he sensed that the concentration of spiritual energy within was several times greater than that of the outside world. This meant that the disciples within Fire Phoenix Valley could cultivate their powers at an astonishingly accelerated rate compared to those outside. This is also why some top-tier forces remain prosperous and unyielding. The placement of every palace here is of great significance. Yanbei could discern that each palace emanated a faint glow. These lights intertwined above Fire Phoenix Valley, forming an enormous gathering array of spiritual energy. Not to mention such a colossal gathering array, even the former Qingyun sect could not have constructed a formation capable of accommodating even a single individual. Truly, Fire Phoenix Valley is only achievable by extraordinary forces. After a moment of reflection, Yanbei stepped towards Fire Phoenix Valley. Who are you to enter Fire Phoenix Valley? A sharp voice rang out as several young women in pink gowns approached him, eyeing him warily. Please inform Senior Bing Huang that Yanbei has come to visit Fire Phoenix Valley, Yanbei said with a slight bow to the disciples. The young women looked at Yanbei in astonishment, scrutinizing him from head to toe. You are Yanbei? They asked incredulously. Yanbei frowned slightly. Indeed. I am Yanbei. Huh. Don't think that just because you possess handsome features, you can impersonate Yanbei. I've never heard of Yanbei having red hair. One of the female disciples remarked, her gaze teasing. Yanbei's lips twitched. I am truly Yanbei. I kindly ask you to pass on my message. Stop pretending. Just leave. There are plenty of imposters claiming to be Yanbei. Look, one of the female disciples pointed. Yanbei followed her gaze and saw several young men clad in white garments with an extraordinary aura standing outside the mountain gate of Fire Phoenix Valley. What does this mean? He queried, somewhat perplexed. They are all imposters just like you. Yet, you are quite unprofessional, arriving without even knowing what color hair others have. If you don't leave soon, I will have someone throw you out. The female disciple declared. Yanbei was utterly bewildered. These are all imitating me, he exclaimed in surprise. When did I acquire such renown that it attracted so many imitators? You are indeed peculiar. You are somewhat different from them. Yet you are all cut from the same cloth. Dream on if you wish to meet the Divine Maiden, the female disciple said, pushing Yanbei out. Divine Maiden? Not long ago, the goddess of Huofeng Valley, Qiming, announced her romantic relationship with Yanbei, shattering the hearts of countless young men. Although Qiming has not held the title of goddess for long, she has been the object of admiration for many suitors. Her beauty is mesmerizing, capable of captivating souls, and her ethereal demeanor invokes an irresistible desire to conquer. Following the announcement of her relationship with Yanbei, a wave of heartbreak swept through many. Yet, one noble youth, infatuated with Qiming, resolved to approach her by disguising himself as Yanbei and ventured into Huofeng Valley, claiming to be him. Astonishingly, he succeeded in meeting the goddess herself. Although he was eventually expelled from the valley, his face swollen like a pig's head, a blissful smile adorned his lips. For the chance to behold the celestial being he had long coveted, he felt no regret in his demise. As this news spread, daily, several individuals claiming to be Yanbei appeared at Huofeng Valley, all yearning for a glimpse of the goddess. The disciples of the valley, having encountered these pretenders, naturally began to associate the genuine Yanbei with such impostors. Standing outside the mountain gate, Yanbei found himself in a state of bewilderment, having indeed been cast out. This was Huofeng Valley, where force could not be employed to breach its sanctity. To attempt such a thing would only lead to ridicule if word spread that he could not even enter the gate. Brother, your attire is quite fashionable. I heard from those ladies of Huofeng Valley that you are also impersonating Yanbei. At that moment, a striking young man clad in white approached Yanbei, his demeanor exuding a certain frivolity, unmistakably a scion of a wealthy family. Yanbei felt a twinge of discomfort as he regarded this individual. From afar, he bore a striking resemblance to himself. However, I must say, if you wish to meet the goddess, you ought to refine your approach. Your bright red hair bears no resemblance to Yanbei whatsoever. The young man ruffled Yanbei's hair, smacking his lips and inquiring, by the way, what is your name? Yanbei, exuding a look of exasperation, replied, I am Yanbei. The young man appeared momentarily stunned. I meant your real name. Everyone here is Yanbei. I am Su Tian. Perhaps you've heard of me? I am the son of the Lord of Jinan Pass. The other young men pretending to be Yanbei were taken aback by Su Tian's identity. Jinan Pass. It is a flourishing city, and the Lord of Jinan is a formidable figure in the region, possessing extraordinary power and awe-inspiring presence. This fellow is indeed the son of the Lord of Jinan. I've never heard of you, so leave me be. Yanbei waved his hand dismissively, signaling for Su Tian to distance himself. Observing Yanbei's aloof demeanor, Su Tian's eyes widened in realization. Yes, precisely this aura. You cannot deny it. You truly resemble Yanbei. He had seen Yanbei from afar in Tianyi City once, and was quite familiar with such an aura. Yanbei's lips twitched in irritation, nearly on the verge of an outburst. Just then, unexpectedly, a roar erupted. A resonant dragon's roar echoed from the distant sky, heralding the descent of a colossal dragon before the gates of the Fire Phoenix Valley. From atop the dragon's head, two figures leaped down, none other than the celestial dragon's son and his brother, Long Xingyun. Word had spread that a grand gathering of prodigies was to take place in the Fire Phoenix Valley tonight, seemingly attracting the elite of the eastern region, with whispers of a sacred place's disciple arriving as well. Su Tian gazed enviously at the back of the celestial dragon's son, then turned to Yan Bei and whispered. Yan Bei's eyes sparkled as he beheld the newcomers. He had found a way to enter the Fire Phoenix Valley. Upon the arrival of the celestial dragon's son, the disciples of the Fire Phoenix Valley exhibited no surprise, offering a slight bow and inviting them inside. The celestial dragon's son nodded and stepped forward into the valley. Chapter 128. The unfortunate son of the god outside the gates of the Fire Phoenix Valley. Yan Bei observed the celestial dragon's son and his companion as they prepared to enter, his gaze illuminating with determination. He strode forward, directly approaching the celestial dragon's son, and unexpectedly shouted at the top of his lungs, "Long Xing Tian." This exclamation startled Su Tian, who exclaimed in disbelief, "Brother, have you lost your mind? That is the son's name, and you risk provoking him." Su Tian was taken aback and hastily attempted to cover Yan Bei's mouth. While Long Xing Tian was indeed the celestial dragon's son's true name, the world revered him solely as the son. To call him by his given name was seen as a provocation. As anticipated, the celestial dragon's son halted, his brow furrowing in curiosity to discern who dared to address him so directly. However, at that moment, Yan Bei's fiery red hair partially obscured his face, preventing immediate recognition. At this juncture, Long Xingyun stepped forward, his expression icy. "Is my brother's name something you are entitled to utter?" The expressions of the female disciples of the Fire Phoenix Valley shifted, astonished by the audacity of this imitator. Even they would not dare to call the son by his name. This fellow was courting disaster. Su Tian's complexion paled as he grasped Yan Bei's arm. Attempting to retreat, "My brother spoke in error. I beg your pardon, esteemed son." "Spoke in error? Do you take me for deaf?" Long Xingyun's demeanor was chilling as he prepared to teach Yan Bei a lesson. In his current state, having ventured into the path of slaughter, Yan Bei's aura was markedly transformed, his hair now a blood-red hue, momentarily obscuring his identity even from the celestial dragon's son. A voice, cold and indifferent, issued from Yan Bei's lips. "Am I not allowed to call Long Xing Tian?" At this proclamation, silence enveloped the entrance of the Fire Phoenix Valley. All present stared in astonishment at Yan Bei. This man was truly fearless. Long Xingyun, seething with rage, retorted, "You dare to claim that right?" With a thunderous crash, a powerful force erupted from Long Xingyun, and he launched a fist towards Yan Bei. Su Tian's expression shifted dramatically. He ceased any intervention and turned to flee, thinking, "This lad is finished." But just as everyone presumed Yan Bei was about to be sent flying by that punch, bang! Long Xingyun's fist struck as if against an iron plate, producing a resounding thud. Yan Bei's palm opened slightly, firmly grasping Long Xingyun's fist. At that moment, the air trembled, a gentle breeze swept through the arena, tousling a strand of hair on Yan Bei's face, revealing his true visage. When Long Xingyun beheld Yan Bei's countenance, he appeared utterly startled. What on earth? He struggled to withdraw his fist, but found that no matter how hard he exerted himself, the hand that held his fist was like a vice, rendering him utterly immobile. Recognizing Yan Bei's identity, Long Xingyun's expression shifted to one of sheer terror, and he turned to the heavenly dragon's son, pleading, "Brother, save me." The heavenly dragon's son's face also changed. He could not stand idly by while his own brother was bullied. Heavenly dragon seal. He formed a seal with his hands, and a fearsome dragon coalesced in the void. With a roar, the dragon surged through the sky, charging directly at Yan Bei. The formidable presence created by the heavenly dragon's son alarmed several individuals within the Fire Phoenix Valley. A smirk graced Yan Bei's lips, as this was precisely the reaction he sought. Upon seeing the heavenly dragon's son, an idea sparked in his mind. Since these disciples failed to recognize his identity, he would ensure they did. Owing a debt of gratitude to the Ice Phoenix, he could not harm those from the Fire Phoenix Valley. Thus, the son from the Heavenly Dragon Palace became his target. He aimed to create a commotion that would draw the attention of those in the Fire Phoenix Valley. With a thunderous crash, he unleashed his own aura, an overwhelming force sweeping across the realm. Long Xingyun was sent flying. Gazing at the dragon in the sky, he extended his hand, and a terrifying golden hand materialized in an instant. The once menacing dragon was seized effortlessly, writhing in his grasp like a slippery eel. How is this possible? The heavenly dragon son's complexion shifted dramatically, astonished that his innate dragon could be captured so easily. "Son, how could you not recognize me after such a short time?" Yan Bei had achieved his intended effect. He released his grip, allowing the dragon to return to the heavenly dragon's son. "Yan Bei, it was my mistake to offend you. please do not harm my brother. Long Xingyun struggled to rise from the ground, addressing Yan Bei. Yan Bei. Upon hearing this name, everyone present was taken aback. The heavenly dragon's son trembled. Ever since their last encounter in the celestial secret realm, Yan Bei had become a haunting specter in his mind. Each time he heard news of him, he found himself comparing himself to Yan Bei, only to discover that in every aspect, he fell short. The heavenly dragon's son, once adorned with the aura of an unparalleled genius, found it difficult to bear such a blow, becoming increasingly troubled within the heavenly dragon palace. Observing the son's distress, the elders of the palace sighed deeply. With the upcoming gathering of prodigies at the Fire Phoenix Valley, the heavenly dragon's son had only decided to accompany his brother here to seek solace after much persuasion. The female disciples who had just expelled Yan Bei from the Fire Phoenix Valley now wore expressions of disbelief. They had never anticipated that this individual was indeed Yan Bei. Su Tian and a group of imitators of Yan Bei stood dumbfounded before the true figure of Yan Bei. They had just witnessed his presence yet failed to recognize him. Their attempts at imitation seemed utterly ludicrous. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of energy emanated from the depths of Fire Phoenix Valley. An old man clad in a gray robe appeared in the void with a flash. Greetings, Elder 4. The disciples of Fire Phoenix Valley bowed to the elder. What has transpired? Elder 4 inquired. The heavenly dragon's son and the individual claiming to be Yan Bei have just had a conflict. One disciple promptly informed Elder 4 of the recent events. Upon hearing the name Yan Bei, Elder 4's murky eyes lit up, and he scrutinized Yan Bei intently. You are Yan Bei? A formidable pressure surged from Elder 4 as he fixed his gaze upon him. Yan Bei remained unfazed, casting a glance at Su Tian and the others, pondering if they were in fact. A moment of silence enveloped the atmosphere. Elder 4 then burst into hearty laughter and approached Yan Bei, wearing a look of satisfaction. Indeed, you are quite to my taste. Come, follow me into the valley. The heavenly dragon's son stood rooted to the spot, feeling a sense of neglect. Elder 4 had not even cast a glance at him since his arrival. Long Xingyun returned to his brother's side, his expression grim. Are we going? The heavenly dragon's son took a deep breath. Of course we are going. This arrogant fellow will surely meet his match. Chapter 129. Reunion. Yan Bei followed Elder 4 towards Fire Phoenix Valley. Young man, I've heard you possess the strength to contend with the extraordinary? Elder 4 looked at Yan Bei with a dubious expression. Senior, you jest. I am merely an ordinary cultivator. Yan Bei replied casually with a smile, shaking his head. An ordinary cultivator can make the heavenly dragon's son gasp for breath? You are not being honest, Elder 4 retorted, smacking his lips at Yan Bei. Along their journey, Elder 4 bombarded him with peculiar questions, such as the number of family members he had, their ages, and how many romantic partners he had had. Yan Bei felt utterly bewildered by the barrage of inquiries, as though he were undergoing a household registration check. Were the elders of Fire Phoenix Valley truly this nosy? Fortunately, after traversing a mountain range, they arrived at a shimmering barrier. Beyond this barrier lies the true Fire Phoenix Valley, Elder 4 declared with a hint of pride. Yan Bei regarded the barrier with gravity, perceiving a force akin to that of a world emanating from it. Could it be that Fire Phoenix Valley was a world unto itself? Let us proceed. Elder 4 beckoned Yan Bei to follow. As Yan Bei stepped into Fire Phoenix Valley, a dramatic transformation unfolded around him, starkly different from before. He had entered a small world, just as he had surmised. Yan Bei's eyes widened in astonishment, silently acknowledging the extraordinary power of this realm. Although it paled in comparison to the Tianqin continent, it was still a remarkable find. At that moment, a faint glow began to emanate from the jade ring on his hand. As Yan Bei caressed the ring in his hand, a flicker of realization crossed his gaze, swiftly followed by a look of astonishment. Moments ago, when he had been intercepted, he had contemplated summoning Qi Meng with the jade ring. However, after several attempts, he had met with failure. This ring was a token shared between him and Qi Meng, while she possessed a pendant. The two objects were meant to resonate when in proximity, and he had initially thought the ring was defective. Yet, it became clear that the true Fire Phoenix Valley was a realm unto itself, isolating them from the outside world, which was why he had been unable to contact Qi Meng. Meanwhile, within the ice and snow sacred hall, the doors swung open. A figure, as ethereal as a moonlit fairy, appeared, her face alight with excitement as she gazed into the distance. Just moments ago, Qi Meng had sensed Yan Bei's presence manifesting within the Fire Phoenix Valley. You have finally arrived. Her beautiful countenance radiated joy, and with a single step, she transformed into a streak of light, racing towards Yan Bei's location. At this moment, Yan Bei too discerned Qi Meng's position and swiftly ascended into the air to close the distance. The fourth elder seemed to sense something amiss, a wry smile gracing his lips as he followed closely behind Yan Bei, choosing not to speak further. Had it been anyone else daring to fly so recklessly above the Fire Phoenix Valley, he would have swiftly brought them down. However, the individual before him was indeed exceptional. In the skies above the Fire Phoenix Valley, the two figures embraced tightly, Qi Ming's delicate form trembling with a joy that defied description. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yan Bei was equally overwhelmed with emotion. "I'm sorry for coming late," he said, gazing deeply into Qi Ming's eyes. Guilt evident in his expression. He could only imagine the fear she must have felt, alone in such a desolate place. "Don't say that. I've already heard from my master, and I do not blame you," Qi Ming interjected, gently covering Yan Bei's lips with her hand. Her eyes filled solely with affection, devoid of any reproach. Initially, she had pondered why Yan Bei had not come to retrieve her from the Fire Phoenix Valley. However, after hearing from the Ice Phoenix, she understood the multitude of events that had unfolded in Yan Bei's life. Ling Er's peril, the sect's crisis, the expedition of the Yunlong Kingdom, and the relentless pursuit from the sacred grounds. Each of these tribulations had kept Yan Bei occupied. As Yan Bei beheld the longing reflected in Qi Ming's eyes, he enveloped her in a deep embrace and kissed her. They became entwined, reluctant to part even for a moment. Observing from a distance, the fourth elder seemed unable to bear the sight any longer and cleared his throat. "Ahem, do mind yourselves. This old man is still present." It was only then that the two lovers snapped back to reality. Qi Ming, upon seeing the fourth elder, trembled slightly, as if startled, her face flushing bright red. "Grandfather, what are you doing here?" "Grandfather?" Yan Bei's eyes widened in bewilderment as he looked at Qi Ming. What was happening? It had only been a short while since he had last seen her. How had her grandfather appeared so suddenly? "Indeed, young man, Qi Ming is my granddaughter. How does it feel to be astonished?" At this moment, the fourth elder gazed at Yan Bei with a smile. Subsequently, Qi Ming recounted to Yan Bei the tale of her encounter with her biological mother in the Fire Phoenix Valley. It was then that Yan Bei displayed a look of realization, understanding why the old man had been so inquisitive with his peculiar questions during their journey. It turned out he was Qi Ming's maternal grandfather. No wonder he was so gossipy. Yan Bei, somewhat taken aback, remarked in disbelief. In the Ice and Snow Sacred Hall, Bing Huang, Shui Qianrou, the fourth elder, and others were present. Qi Ming solemnly introduced Yan Bei to her mother. In recent days, after emerging from the ice prison, Shui Qianrou had heard numerous legends about Yan Bei. Now, upon meeting him in person, she felt quite pleased. Yan Bei, shedding his usually cold demeanor, appeared as warm and gentle as a neighborly boy, which astonished Bing Huang. "Yan Bei, how is the Qinyan sect? It has been ages since I last returned. And I miss my father and the others dearly," Qi Ming said affectionately, linking her arm with Yan Bei's. However, upon mentioning the sect, Yan Bei's expression suddenly turned frosty. "A few days ago, a half-saint descended upon the southern wilderness, and the sect was destroyed. Fortunately, I managed to relocate the sect members in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable." Hearing the first part, Qi Ming and the others nearly fainted from fright. "What about my father and the others now?" Qi Ming immediately stood up, her face tense, while Shui Qianrou's expression mirrored her anxiety. They were dreadfully afraid of receiving bad news. Yan Bei's gaze flickered before he offered a reassuring smile. "Annie, Qi Ming, do not worry. Everyone from the Qingyun sect has been safely relocated to an extremely secure place. And there is no danger." He hesitated for a moment, opting not to disclose the existence of the Tianqin continent. After all, the revelation of such a place would be profoundly shocking, and if others were to learn of it, it could invite insurmountable peril upon him. Chapter 130, The Gathering of Talents, The Arrival of the Tao Child. Upon hearing that the members of the Qingyun sect were unharmed, Qi Ming and her mother finally breathed a sigh of relief. "As long as they are safe, I can rest easy," Shui Qianrou sighed, her eyes reflecting deep nostalgia. After more than 20 years apart, she wondered how the Qingyun sect was faring. "Where are my father and the others now?" Qi Ming inquired. Yan Bei chuckled softly. "They are safe at the moment, and I will take you to see them soon." While Qi Ming completely trusted him, he harbored a lingering caution regarding Andy, the fourth elder, and Bing Huang. Although Bing Huang had aided him multiple times, he sensed that her help was driven by ulterior motives. As for Auntie and the fourth elder, he had only just met them, and it was only natural that he would not reveal all his cards. If the existence of the Tianqin continent were to be unveiled, it would likely incite the entire Hongwu continent to hunt him down. He understood well the adage that an innocent man can suffer for possessing a jewel. Since Yan Bei had spoken thus, Qi Ming refrained from further inquiries. The group engaged in light conversation about everyday matters. As night fell and the moonlight illuminated a pavilion, two figures nestled against each other. Yan Bei looked down at the extraordinary beauty resting on his shoulder, a smile gracing his lips. At this moment, his heart was enveloped in an unparalleled tranquility. The two remained silent, simply nestled against each other, their eyes brimming with profound affection that spoke volumes. Time slipped by unnoticed. A sudden knock echoed from outside the door. Qiming swiftly adjusted her attire, restoring her usual aloof demeanor. "What is it?" she inquired. "My lady, the talent banquet is about to commence this evening," replied the maid from outside. "Understood. You may leave," Qiming nodded. The maid retreated, careful not to intrude further. Yan Bei observed a contemplative expression in Qiming's eyes. Earlier, at the entrance of Fire Phoenix Valley, he had heard Su Tian, who portrayed him, mention the upcoming talent banquet. Qiming's brows furrowed with a hint of worry. Her face clouded with unspoken thoughts. Yan Bei naturally noticed the shift in her emotions. "It seems you are reluctant to attend?" The flicker of concern in Qiming's eyes vanished, replaced by a radiant smile. "Not at all. Since it is a banquet hosted by Fire Phoenix Valley, it is only natural for me to be present." Yan Bei, observing her demeanor, sensed that she was concealing something from him. "Do you require my company?" Qiming waved her hands in dismissal. "No need. Please wait for me here. I shall return shortly." With that, she tidied herself and departed from the ice and snow sanctuary. Yan Bei watched her retreating figure, his brow slightly furrowed. When the talent banquet was mentioned, Qiming had displayed an unusual reaction, though he could not pinpoint why. What could she possibly be hiding from him? Tonight, Fire Phoenix Valley was destined to be a scene of exuberance. In a certain location within the valley stood a resplendent palace, its golden and jade splendor radiating under the moonlight. The surrounding lakes rippled gently, and lush pavilions stood in serene repose. At this moment, the area was teeming with figures. Outside the grand hall, the various stewards of Fire Phoenix Valley stood guard, poised for any eventuality. This palace was the gathering place for the most remarkable talents of the Eastern Domain. The sound of music echoed, ethereal birds danced in the air, and figures stood tall, exuding an aura as deep as the ocean, each one a dragon among men. As the host, the goddesses Feng Zhiyue and Qiming had arrived early. Just then, a figure strode across the lake's surface. His demeanor was cold and imposing, emanating a terrifying aura that pressed upon the onlookers like a mountain, causing them to gasp for breath. Many of the young talents present paled at the sight, exclaiming in astonishment, "It is indeed Jin Yang Daozi. He has arrived." The atmosphere shifted palpably among the assembled talents. The newcomer was none other than Jin Yang, the most outstanding prodigy of one of the Eastern Domain's holy sites, Jin Yang Holy Land. It was rumored that he had cultivated for 28 years, achieving a high level of mastery in the Four Extremes realm, and possessed the formidable Jin Yang sacred body. 5 years prior, Jin Yang had emerged into prominence, not yet a holy site's Daozi, stirring the Eastern Domain and defeating countless young prodigies, earning him the title of the young generation's king. After joining the Golden Sun's sacred land and becoming a Daozi, he devoted himself to cultivation, emerging once more after 5 years. With the arrival of Jin Yan, the gathering began to flourish, as numerous saints and divine children engaged in amiable conversation, basking in the moment's splendor. At this juncture, the heavenly dragon divine child stood up, holding a wine cup, and approached Jin Yan to converse. Having met several times before, they were not strangers. However, the heavenly dragon divine child shed his usual arrogance, now displaying a demeanor of cordiality, recognizing Jin Yan's esteemed status as a Daozi and refraining from any haughtiness, maintaining a smile throughout their interaction. Sensing the envious glances directed at him from the surrounding crowd, a flicker of pride welled up within him. Among those present, he seemed to be the only one capable of conversing with the Daozi of the sacred land. Yet, Jin Yan appeared to harbor a different sentiment, his brow furrowing as he observed the heavenly dragon divine child lingering nearby. Scanning the vicinity, he noted the absence of any peers of his caliber, and a hint of disappointment crossed his features. He shook his head and rose, making his way deeper into the grand hall, deliberately ignoring the chattering heavenly dragon divine child. At that moment, the heavenly dragon divine child, clutching his wine cup, wore a remarkably stiff expression, the pride he had just felt shattered into pieces. Suddenly, a terrifying aura descended upon the gathering, and a vibrant green rainbow swiftly entered the hall. The Daozi of the Golden Sun regarded the newcomer with a glimmer of surprise. "Brother Jin Yang, it has been a while. I hope you have been well." As the green light dissipated, a strikingly handsome young man appeared, smiling at Jin Yan. "Zhang Chuyun," Jin Yan exclaimed, astonished by the arrival. The utterance of this name silenced the entire banquet, as all eyes turned in shock toward the newly arrived youth. "He has come from the Taichu sacred land." Someone gasped in disbelief. The current Daozi of the Taichu sacred land was indeed Zhang Chuyun, his reputation resounding through the realms. Chapter 131, Dreamy Secrets, Unfolding Banquet Turbulence. Zhang Chuyun, born in the Taichu sacred land, is said to have caused the heavens to tremble and divine light to shine on the day of his birth. It is rumored that he possesses a sacred bone within him, embodying the form of a great sage. From a young age, he demonstrated extraordinary talent. At 3 years old, he reached the Qi refinement stage. At 5, the Qi Si stage. At 10, the primordial spirit stage. At 15, the divine palace stage. And at 21, he achieved the 4 extreme stage. Now, at 26, he has reached the pinnacle of the ninefold 4 extreme stage, a feat truly astonishing. The crowd was visibly stirred. In a single day, 2 Daozi from the sacred lands had graced the gathering. The eastern region boasts 3 sacred lands, and apart from the Dine sacred land, the other 2 Daozi were now present. Zhang Chuyan, I thought you were not coming? Jin Yin inquired, astonished. As Daozi of 2 great sacred lands, they were naturally well acquainted. The celestial banquet hosted by the Fire Phoenix Valley had been announced to all major factions a year prior. 3 months prior, Jin Yin had inquired of Zhang Chuyan whether he would accompany him to the Fire Phoenix Valley for the celestial banquet, a gathering meant for the exchange of insights regarding their respective paths. However, Zhang Chuyan had disdainfully declined the invitation at that time. Yet now, to Jin Yan's astonishment, Zhang Chuyan had arrived at the Fire Phoenix Valley to partake in the banquet. Initially, Jin Yan believed there was nothing of interest for him at this gathering, but he soon realized his error. He had come specifically for one individual. A knowing smile graced Zhang Chuyan's lips. For one person? The very utterance sent a tremor through the crowd. Who could possess such influence as to summon the esteemed Taichu Daozi? Jin Yan wore a perplexed expression, feeling as though no one else present could possibly compare to him. Yet, Zhang Chuyan claimed to have come for a singular purpose. Who could that person be? Before long, clarity dawned upon them. Zhang Chuyan strode confidently into the grand hall, and as he passed, countless prodigies instinctively recoiled, unwilling to obstruct his path. He soon halted before a captivating figure, gazing at her with profound affection. Jin Yan, who understood the situation, suddenly wore a look of realization. Although Zhang Chuyan was a Daozi from a revered holy land, it did not diminish his charm. He had courted many beautiful women in his past. With his status, strength, and striking appearance, numerous ladies willingly professed their devotion to him. At that moment, upon witnessing the enchanting figure beside Zhang Chuyan, Jin Yan comprehended the reason for his presence. The other prodigies, familiar with Zhang Chuyan's exploits, also displayed expressions of enlightenment. How could it be her, the Phoenix Feather Goddess? One exclaimed in astonishment. Others echoed similar sentiments, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and surprise. Standing opposite Zhang Chuyan was a figure draped in white, surrounded by a mist that accentuated her graceful form, dancing as if descended from the heavens beneath the moonlight. She was none other than Qiming, one of the 2 divine maidens of the Fire Phoenix Valley. At that moment, Qiming regarded Zhang Chuyan with a flicker of disdain, though she dared not reveal her feelings. Zhang Chuyan had been pursuing her for some time, akin to a piece of stubborn toffee that refused to be shaken off. This was, in fact, a principal reason for her reluctance to attend the banquet. Shortly after she ascended to her divine status, an elder from the Taichu Holy Land had brought Zhang Chuyan to Fire Phoenix Valley to discuss the Tao. Naturally, the valley had extended a warm welcome and tasked the 2 divine maidens with showing Zhang Chuyan around. However, from the moment Qiming emerged, even Zhang Chuyan, a man of worldly experience, could not help but be struck by her extraordinary beauty. Her ethereal presence, marked by a cold elegance, captivated him utterly. Since the full awakening of her ice spirit physique, Qiming's aura had become even more otherworldly, resembling a celestial being descended from the heavens, untouched by earthly trivialities. Such a transcendent beauty was unprecedented for Zhang Chuyan. It was no wonder that he had fallen for her at first sight. From the moment he laid eyes on Qiming, gazing upon other women felt like chewing on wax. Even Feng Jiue, a goddess in her own right, could not stir a ripple in his heart. He yearned to possess Qiming. As the Daozi, he had always had his wishes fulfilled within the Taichu sacred land. Yet Qiming was the first woman to stir his emotions deeply. He desired to win her over personally, to make her willingly succumb to his advances and satisfy his inner yearning for conquest. However, recent developments had not been smooth. Qiming seemed utterly indifferent to him. Nevertheless, Zhang Chuyan did not falter. He took residence in the Fire Phoenix Valley, facilitating his pursuit of Qiming. At this juncture, Qiming had approached Bing Huang on multiple occasions, hoping to have her send Zhang Chuyan away. Yet, Bing Huang had made it clear that these matters were trivial affairs among the younger generation. And since Zhang Chuyan was the Daozi of the sacred land, he had not acted inappropriately, leaving her with no grounds for interference. Thus, Qiming had no choice but to endure Zhang Chuyan's daily intrusions, albeit he had not crossed any lines, always maintaining a respectful distance of 3 inches from her. Dreamer, it has been 5 full hours since we last met. It feels as though ages have passed, and I miss you dearly, Zhang Chuyan said, gazing at Qiming with profound affection. Such an intimate address elicited astonishment from all present. Qiming, newly appointed as the Phoenix Feather Goddess of the Fire Phoenix Valley, and Zhang Chuyun held positions that indeed matched. However, had Qiming not just announced her relationship with Yan Bei, the rising star of the younger generation? What was this peculiar entanglement with Zhang Chuyun? Whispers of disbelief circulated among countless prodigies. It seemed that Qiming had caught wind of their murmurs, her anger igniting as her chest heaved. Perhaps it was the effect of their words, for her expression suddenly turned icy. Zhang Chuyun, I have told you more than once not to call me that. I already have someone I care for deeply. We are quite happy together. Please do not pursue me any further. Her voice, tinged with reprimand, instantly silenced the grand hall, all conversations halting abruptly. The atmosphere grew eerily quiet. Zhang Chuyun, once wearing a bright smile, felt it fade into an expression of coldness. Qiming's scolding had left him no face, as if labeling him a morally corrupt interloper disrupting the happiness of others. Yet, he took a deep breath. Recalibrating his mindset, the one you cherish is none other than the notorious Yan Bei of the Eastern Domain? To me, he is merely a jester, easily crushed beneath my feet. Upon hearing Zhang Chuyun's disparagement of Yan Bei, Qiming's face turned frigid, and just as she prepared to retort, a tall figure appeared at the entrance of the hall, a voice laced with icy disdain emanating from him. You claim you can crush me at will? Perhaps you should weigh your own capabilities first. Chapter 132. The arrival of Yan Bei. At that moment, astonishment rippled through the hall, and all eyes turned toward the entrance, captivated by the unfolding scene. At this moment, at the entrance of the grand hall, a figure clad in white stood silently, his blood-red hair dancing freely in the air, resembling an unparalleled demon pressing upon the hearts of all present. Though his expression remained inscrutable, everyone could discern from his profound gaze the air of dominion he exuded. Yan Bei, he has arrived. A chorus of astonished exclamations erupted among the onlookers. Those gathered were the distinguished talents of the eastern region, many of whom had recently participated in the Tianyi secret realm, and thus recognized Yan Bei's identity at a glance. Only those who had entered the Tianyi secret realm could truly appreciate the extraordinary prowess of Yan Bei. Unperturbed by the gazes of the crowd, Yan Bei strode purposefully into the hall, his demeanor cold and aloof, radiating an aura of sharpness. As he passed, the other talents instinctively withdrew, not daring to obstruct his path. In that moment, Yan Bei embodied an overwhelming presence, and none dared to challenge him. Yan Bei? At this juncture, Jin Yan and Zhang Chuyun simultaneously cast their eyes upon Yan Bei. Jin Yan, curious, simply regarded this rising star of the eastern region, while Zhang Chuyun, as a rival, felt a surge of animosity, for enemies often regard each other with heightened scrutiny. So you are Yan Bei? Zhang Chuyun demanded. Yan Bei cast a fleeting glance at him, choosing to ignore the provocation, and continued towards the spot where Qiming stood. Upon seeing Yan Bei's arrival, a flicker of worry crossed Qiming's eyes. What are you doing here? I told you to wait for me at home. In that instant, the fierce aura surrounding Yan Bei softened as he approached her. He gently pinched her delicate face, feigning trepidation as he teased, if I leave my wife here alone to suffer, wouldn't I be labeled a coward if I did not come? Qiming, observing Yan Bei's mock fear, couldn't he help but chuckle. You have quite the silver tongue. Were you troubled by this person when you arrived? Yan Bei cast a sidelong glance at Zhang Chuyun. Qiming's expression grew complicated, and though she remained silent, she eventually nodded slightly under Yan Bei's scrutinizing gaze. However, as the person who knew Qiming best, Yan Bei quickly discerned her thoughts. You little girl, you dared to lie to me just now. I simply didn't want to drag you into this trouble, Qiming replied, her face tinged with guilt. Since leaving Qingyun's sect, she had not been able to assist Yan Bei in any way. Now, entangled with the holy son of Taichu, she longed for someone to stand by her side to resolve this matter, yet she did not wish to burden Yan Bei. Yan Bei, already facing the formidable Da Yan Holy Land alone, was in a precarious position. She did not want to add to his troubles by involving him in her situation with Taichu Holy Land. You are my beloved. What trouble could there be? In the future, you must inform me of such matters immediately. If I cannot even protect my beloved, what use is the cultivation of this path? Yan Bei spoke earnestly to Qiming. Seeing the fierce expression on Yan Bei's face, Qiming pouted her lips in a display of feigned grievance and nodded. All right. I understand. However, within Qiming's heart, there was a surge of secret delight. She relished the feeling of being cherished. In the grand hall, all the talented individuals gazed enviously at this pair of exquisite lovers. Simultaneously, many cast curious glances at Zhang Chuyun. Others were clearly in a blissful relationship. Yet this fellow shamelessly sought to intervene, completely disregarding propriety, truly unbecoming of someone from the sacred land. However, such thoughts were only whispered in the recesses of their minds. None dared to voice them aloud, for Zhang Chuyun was a figure of significant standing, not to be trifled with. At that moment, Zhang Qiyun's expression shifted dramatically under the weight of the onlooker's scrutiny, contorted with displeasure. His beloved was openly exchanging tender affections with another man before his very eyes, igniting a fury within him. Yet, he had indeed intruded, leaving him at a loss for words. Young man, did you not hear the esteemed Daozi's words just now? At this juncture, one of the young prodigies stepped forth from behind Zhang Qiyun, his gaze dark and fixated on Yan Bei. This individual was the holy son of the Tiger Sect, a subordinate faction under the Taichu sacred land. Seeing an opportunity to curry favor with the Daozi, he was unwilling to let it slip away. Those who had previously witnessed Yan Bei's prowess immediately altered their expressions, casting sympathetic glances toward this holy son. Of course, some regarded him as a fool, bewildered by his eagerness to involve himself in matters that did not concern him. He was utterly oblivious to his own limitations. Yan Bei suited no one. He had already broken through to the four extremes in the Tianyi secret realm. This fool dared to provoke him. Was he courting death? The holy son of the Tiger sect noticed the gazes of those around him, but remained oblivious to their sentiments. He focused solely on Zhang Qiyun, emboldened by his presence. Indeed, the previously furious Zhang Qiyun's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of admiration upon witnessing this individual step forward. The holy son of the Tiger sect, encouraged by Zhang Qiyun's gaze, advanced another step with renewed confidence. What audacity to bark in my presence! Yan Bei slowly turned his body, his gaze chilling and his demeanor frigid as he regarded the holy son, an overwhelming pressure sending a shiver through his opponent's heart. In an instant, Yan Bei's form trembled, vanishing from his original position, his hand extending towards the holy son in a crushing gesture. Zhang Qiyun's expression shifted, and he immediately sought to intervene, wishing to shield the holy son from Yan Bei's wrath. But it was too late. Bang! Yan Bei's speed was astonishing. He reached the holy son in an instant, raising his hand to deliver a devastating blow. The terrifying aura of his presence compelled the holy son of the Tiger sect to kneel before him with a resounding thud. In that moment, the sound of shattering bones echoed through the hall, the floor splintering beneath them as crimson blood flowed from the holy son's leg. His expression contorted in agony. He began to scream, cold sweat pouring down his brow. The countenance of all present shifted dramatically. Yan Bei's strength was utterly terrifying. At that moment, Zhang Qiyun's retaliation struck. Boom! Yan Bei did not respond. Instead, he extended his left hand and struck with a palm, the forces of both colliding in an instant, dissipating into nothingness. With one hand, he suppressed the Tiger Saint, while with the other, he countered the Daozi of the Holy Land. This breathtaking spectacle left the talented individuals within the grand hall in shock, their expressions filled with astonishment. Is this the extent of the Daozi's power? A hint of disdain curled at the corner of Yan Bei's mouth. Zhang Qiyun, as a naturally born saint, commanded attention wherever he went. Now, witnessing Yan Bei suppressing his own people before him, it was a blatant affront to his pride. Chapter 133. The Young Master's Supreme Battle. You seek death. Zhang Qiyun's fury ignited, and he began to unleash his true power. Boom! The entire hall trembled as a terrifying aura erupted from the Taichu saint, instantly sending all nearby talents flying. The onlookers were awestruck, for Zhang Qiyun's might was overwhelmingly fearsome, instilling a sense of helplessness within them. The aura of the pinnacle of the Four Extremes realm was now fully revealed. Yan Bei's eyes flickered with intensity, for this was the first time he faced a genius whose cultivation was nearly on par with his own. Bang! He delivered a powerful kick, sending the Tiger Saint crashing to the ground, uncertain of his fate. Pinnacle of the Four Extremes realm? How fortuitous, for I am as well. Boom! An even more vast aura erupted from Yan Bei, shaking the grand hall to its very foundations. Step forth and let me see what merits this naturally born saint possesses. Yan Bei's figure flashed, appearing above the hall, his gaze icy. The countless onlookers of the Fire Phoenix Valley were stirred, all gazing in awe at the two figures suspended in the sky. Even some elders who had been in seclusion emerged, drawn to the confrontation unfolding above. Meanwhile, in a mysterious chamber within the Fire Phoenix Valley, three formidable figures stood, fully aware of all that transpired. Ice Phoenix, is this the individual you mentioned? A majestic man, engulfed in flames, appeared, his piercing gaze seemingly penetrating the void as he looked toward Yan Bei. He was the legendary Fire Phoenix, renowned a millennium ago alongside Ice Phoenix. Beside him stood an elderly figure, frail yet dignified, the ancestral elder of the Fire Phoenix Valley, Feng Jutian. What do you think of the outcome between the two? Ice Phoenix did not answer Fire Phoenix's inquiry, but instead turned to the two combatants. Though Zhang Qiyun was known for his flirtatious nature, being a naturally born saint, and possessing various powerful techniques from the Taichu Holy Land, few in the eastern region could rival him. Fire Phoenix pondered briefly before speaking. While he did not explicitly declare a victor, His implications were clear. He did not hold high hopes for Yin Bei. And you, Feng Jiutian? Ice Phoenix inquired of the frail elder. Feng Jiutian gazed into the void, his murky eyes suddenly sparkling with insight, and then he smiled. I believe this young friend, named Yin Bei, may possess the upper hand. Upon hearing this, Ice Phoenix burst into melodious laughter. Fire Phoenix raised an eyebrow, questioning. Are you doubting me? Feng Jiutian shook his head with a bitter smile. How could I dare to question my seniors? However, I have sensed a fortuitous opportunity recently, drawing me closer to that realm, allowing me to perceive things that my predecessors cannot. At this moment, the Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix were taken aback. Are you about to attain sanctity? Feng Jiutian, who had previously leaned against the railing, now stood upright, emanating an unprecedented aura. His eyes, once murky, now sparkled with vitality and boundless energy. Witnessing this scene, the Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix were filled with joy. This was the harbinger of Feng Jiutian's impending sanctification. Indeed, this young friend from Yin Bei was extraordinary, as the Ice Phoenix had suggested. There was an air of dominance about him, and the energy within him flowed like a vast starry sky, ceaseless and profound. Even a hint of an aura lingered that made the elder tremble with apprehension. Every inch of his flesh was infused with unfathomable power, and Zhang Chuyun from the Holy Land would likely not stand a chance against him. At this juncture, Feng Jiutian spoke again. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, as remnants of a saint's soul, would naturally perceive more than two beings without a corporeal form. The Fire Phoenix, silent, gazed into the distance. At that moment, above the Fire Phoenix Valley, terrifying energies swept across the heavens and the earth. The clash of the two youthful supremes creating an awe-inspiring spectacle. Several elders of the Fire Phoenix Valley flanked the scene, counterbalancing the residual energy waves produced by their battle. Zhang Qiyun's expression was grave. During the exchanges with Yin Bei, he found himself constantly on the defensive. Were it not for the continuous enhancement from the sacred bones within him, he would have felt utterly incapable of enduring even a single strike from his opponent. Yet, how could that be? Even without the sacred bones, he was a pinnacle existence within the 9th layer of the Four Extremes realm, and now he had discerned Yin Bei's cultivation level, 8th layer of the Four Extremes realm, a whole tier beneath his own. Yet, the sensation of being utterly outmatched was undeniably real. Each punch from Yin Bei, while Zhang Chuyun could block, left him struggling. Not only was Zhang Chuyun stunned, but the onlooking prodigies were equally aghast. They had initially believed Yin Bei to be stronger than the likes of divine sons, which was impressive enough. Now, witnessing the true form of Yin Bei, who was directly overpowering the Holy Land's Taozi, they realized that several of Yin Bei's attacks nearly shattered his defenses. As the Holy Land's Taozi, Zhang Chuyun found himself in a predicament, his pride bruised. Since you seek your demise, do not blame me. Suddenly, he distanced himself from Yin Bei. Boom. The entire world began to tremble. Zhang Chuyun's eyes erupted with a chilling, terrifying energy, radiating a luminous white light akin to a full moon illuminating the expanse. The observing Jinyang Taozi's expression shifted dramatically. This fellow is about to unleash that move. Those familiar with Zhang Chuyun's capabilities also turned pale, hastily retreating to safety. Light of Taichu. Zhang Chuyun bellowed to the heavens, his gaze intensifying in brilliance, and then he fixed his stare upon Yin Bei. Boom. Two terrifying beams of light suddenly pierced through the void, shooting towards Yin Bei with alarming speed. Feeling the aura emanating from them, Yin Bei's expression shifted slightly. The two beams exuded an overwhelming sense of danger. He swiftly evaded. Boom. A sound akin to the collapse of the heavens reverberated through the skies, as a mountain was obliterated into dust by the two beams. The ground itself was scarred, creating a chasm 1,000 meters deep. Countless spectators were left in shock, gazing at Zhang Chuyun, realizing that a mere glance could level a mountain. Who could withstand such force if it were to strike a human body? Yin Bei, too, felt a chill of fear. The power of these beams was terrifying, far surpassing what could be unleashed at this level. By his estimation, the strength that Zhang Chuyun was manifesting could easily rival that of a transcendent being at the 3rd tier. Chapter 134. Clash of Sacred Artifacts above Fenghua Valley. The battle between the two young supremes had reached a fever pitch. Boom. A horrific beam of light surged forth. The void shattered, revealing a pitch-black spatial rift. Yin Bei's gaze grew solemn. The primordial light wielded by Zhang Chuyun posed a significant threat to him. Each near miss ignited a burning sensation within his body. It was crucial to note that this was merely the result of the beam not striking him. He surmised that had he been hit, the injury would have been considerable. Are you a monkey, jumping around like that? Zhang Chuyun's irritated voice echoed. Despite the might of his primordial light, it bore a significant flaw. It was challenging to land a hit on his adversary. Have you lost your mind? Do you expect me to just stand here and let you strike me? A smirk of mockery curled at the corner of Yanbei's lips. Yet, internally, he felt a deep silence. Zhang Qiyun's prowess was indeed remarkable, living up to the title of a natural-born saint. Even Yanbei could only temporarily evade the brilliance of his primordial light. Zhang Qiyun stood in the void, his eyes radiating a chilling white light that was even more terrifying. So you want to dodge, do you? Let's see how you escape this. Void divine chain, he bellowed, as a chain adorned with resplendent divine light shot forth from his sleeve, binding towards Yanbei. At this moment, the Ice Phoenix's gaze widened in astonishment. This fellow had even summoned the Void Divine Chain, a sacred artifact. Yanbei was in trouble. Yanbei's expression turned serious as he watched the Void Divine Chain approach. Even before it neared him, he felt a disruption in the flow of his spiritual energy. The Void Divine Chain was the personal artifact of the founding ancestor of the primordial sacred land, the primordial sacred king, reputed to restrain all foes. The combination of this sacred artifact with Zhang Qiyun's primordial light could unleash an unfathomable power. He intended to use the Void Divine Chain to bind me, and then strike with the primordial light. Yanbei's expression darkened. He knew he could no longer remain passive. Boom. Mother Qi Cauldron, appear. Yanbei roared to the heavens. As a grand cauldron shattered the void and descended. Having completed his sign-ins, he had gathered 2,500 shards of the Mother Qi Cauldron. At this moment, however, the primordial essence cauldron he had condensed had only utilized 1,000 fragments, barely achieving the standard of a sacred artifact. The instant the cauldron made its appearance, countless onlookers were struck with awe, their gazes fixated on the scene unfolding in the void. Could it be another sacred artifact? As they felt the terrifying fluctuations emanating from the primordial essence cauldron, many trembled in fear. Sacred artifacts. In the Eastern domain, sacred artifacts were as rare as saints, predominantly wielded by sacred lands or extraordinary powers. The emergence of a sacred artifact from a nascent cultivator like Yanbei was nothing short of astonishing. Zhang Qiyun's eyes flickered with surprise. He had not anticipated that Yanbei possessed a sacred artifact, igniting a flicker of greed in his gaze. The Void Divine Chain had been a laborious acquisition from the Taichu sacred land, and now, witnessing the sacred cauldron, his heart surged with fervor. If he could seize this cauldron, his power would undoubtedly ascend to new heights. At that moment, the Void Divine Chain was already closing in on Yanbei. Suppress. Yanbei coldly snorted and waved his hand, sending the primordial essence cauldron crashing toward the Void Divine Chain. Boom. A terrifying wave of energy erupted in the sky. A mocking expression appeared on Zhang Qiyun's face. The Void Divine Chain was a sacred royal weapon. While this cauldron had only just reached the sacred artifact level, there was no doubt he would be defeated in such a clash. Yanbei's gaze remained unperturbed. Oh? Is that so? Boom. At that moment, as the two sacred artifacts collided, another wave of terrifying energy surged forth. Zhang Qiyun, feeling the shift within, turned pale in disbelief. How could this be? His eyes trembled with shock. Not only him, but even Bing Huang and others watching from the void exhibited expressions of astonishment. In the void, the primordial essence cauldron radiated endless sacred light, with strands of mysterious yellow essence cascading down, each appearing as heavy as mountains. A terrifying aura enveloping the heavens and the earth. Astonishingly, the Void Divine Chain, despite being a sacred royal weapon, trembled slightly after clashing with the primordial essence cauldron, and even a corner of the chain bore fine cracks. At this moment, the Void Divine Chain was suppressed beneath the primordial essence cauldron, quivering and desperately attempting to break free from the restraint, yet it was utterly immobilized. How could this be? The Void Divine Chain was a sacred royal weapon. How could it possibly be defeated by this broken cauldron? Zhang Qiyun's gaze quivered, his face a mask of disbelief. A cold smile crept onto Yanbei's lips. He had anticipated this outcome. He was acutely aware of what the primordial essence cauldron represented. It bore the terrifying murderous intent that had once slain countless immortals, something that ordinary sacred artifacts could hardly rival, even if the primordial essence cauldron currently was merely at the sacred artifact level. The materials that forged it were not something the Void Divine Chain could compare to. The two were simply not on the same tier. There is nothing impossible. Submit. Yanbei's expression turned frigid as he bellowed at the Void Divine Chain, and at that moment, the primordial essence cauldron erupted with even more resplendent brilliance, causing the Void Divine Chain to tremble uncontrollably. Countless spectators were struck with astonishment. Yanbei was actually attempting to force the Void Divine Chain into submission. Seize the sacred artifact. He sought to seize Zhang Qiyun's sacred artifact. A collective gasp resonated through the crowd. Even Jin Yin, standing firmly on the ground, displayed a flicker of astonishment. The Void Divine Chain was the primordial sacred artifact of the Taichu Holy Land, and even if it lay unguarded, None would dare to approach it, for it would invoke the unending wrath of the Taichu Holy Land. Yet, astonishingly, under such a watchful gaze, Yanbei intended to directly snatch the void divine chain. Such audacity had once been beyond their wildest imaginations. This young man was truly reckless, daring even to consume the void divine chain. Feng Jiutian's gaze quivered, revealing a hint of inexplicable intrigue towards Yanbei. This lad possessed a spirit that rivaled my own. At that moment, a fierce blaze ignited within the eyes of the fire phoenix, stirred by the audacity of the act, which set his blood aflame. Boom! The clash of the two sacred artifacts reverberated through the air, causing the very fabric of space to tremble. The void divine chain emanated an indomitable will. When a weapon reaches the level of a sacred artifact, it awakens a spirit, and now the spirit of the void divine chain had emerged. Chapter 135, Void Divine Chain. Let it be a belt. Who dares to contend for the sacred artifact? A majestic figure stepped forth from the void divine chain, his gaze icy. A terrifying aura sweeping across the heavens and the earth. The spirit of the artifact had materialized. However, his appearance seemed to enrage the primordial vitality cauldron. Boom! A thunderous sound erupted as the primordial vitality cauldron charged directly at the void divine chain. Instantly, a chilling cry echoed through the arena. Under the terrifying impact, the void divine chain cracked. A fissure appeared upon it, and the spirit of the void divine chain emitted a heart-wrenching wail, its form becoming increasingly ethereal. The primordial vitality cauldron showed no intention of relenting, continuing its relentless assault. A commanding aura radiated from the great cauldron, as if it were the nemesis of all weapons, compelling the spirit of the void divine chain to kneel in submission. This sensation was akin to the bloodline suppression found in fierce beasts. The primordial vitality cauldron was an ancient artifact, and though its rank was not superior to that of the void divine chain, it wielded absolute dominance. No! Zhang Chuyun cried out in terror, for at that moment, he felt the connection to the void divine chain severed. His sacred artifact had truly been wrested away by Yanbei. At that moment, Yanbei reached out, and the void divine chain fell into his grasp. A smile playing upon his lips, his eyes brimming with a provocative challenge directed at Zhang Chuyun. He had genuinely succeeded. What manner of object was that great cauldron, capable of subduing a sacred king's artifact? Feng Jiutian gazed in astonishment at the unfolding scene. The fire phoenix and ice phoenix were equally astounded. Yanbei had indeed accomplished the unimaginable. The sacred king artifact of the Taichu Holy Land, the void divine chain, had become a masterless entity. Such an extraordinary event had never occurred before. The great cauldron seemed peculiar, as if it were missing a significant portion of itself. At this moment, the fiery phoenix's eyes blazed like torches, seemingly piercing through the veil of illusion, his gaze filled with astonishment. After employing his innate divine ability, the heavenly fire eye, he discovered that the great cauldron wielded by Yanbei was, in fact, flawed, missing a staggering 2/3. A significant portion was merely condensed energy. What? Ice Phoenix and Feng Jiutian were instantly taken aback, fully aware of the prowess of the fiery phoenix, and knowing he would not speak idly. A cauldron missing such a considerable portion, what could that possibly signify? It was akin to wielding a slender sword that had been reduced to nothing but its hilt while engaging in combat with a gleaming spear. The disparity was glaringly apparent. Ordinarily, the spear would undoubtedly prevail, yet the outcome was astonishingly the opposite. Where on earth did this fellow procure such a formidable cauldron? Its broken state was already terrifying. One could only wonder what its full restoration might entail. The fiery phoenix gazed in awe at the primordial cauldron of all things. Ice Phoenix and her companion fell silent. Yet the astonishment in their eyes remained unabated. Return my sacred king artifact. Zhang Chuyun howled with a vicious expression, his body trembling slightly. Should the sacred king artifact be lost, even he, as a disciple of the Tao, would face severe repercussions, potentially losing his life over it. I obtained it through my own merit. Do you think it can simply be returned? Yanbei sneered, grasping the void chain of continuity. However, he found the chain to be utterly worthless, feeling as though it served no purpose other than to be a mere belt. After all, possessing the primordial cauldron of all things rendered any weapon in the world beneath his notice. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yanbei disdainfully regarded the void chain, subsequently fastening the sacred king artifact around his waist. Strangely enough, it makes for a rather decent belt, he muttered, satisfaction evident in his tone. At that moment, the entirety of Fire Phoenix Valley, Ice Phoenix and the others included, was left utterly dumbfounded. Using a sacred king artifact as a belt? Had this young man lost his mind? Yet, observing his earnest demeanor, it was clear he was not jesting. He genuinely intended to utilize the void chain as a belt. Uft! Zhang Chuyun seemed to be enraged beyond measure. spitting out a mouthful of blood. The void chain, which he cherished as a treasure, was treated with such disdain by his opponent, who even went so far as to use it as a belt. Was this not a blatant insult? I shall have your life. Zhang Chuyun wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, bellowing furiously. Boom. The void trembled as a terrifying beam of light surged once more towards Yan Bei. Is that all you've got? Yan Bei scoffed, mobilizing the primordial cauldron of all things to charge at Zhang Chuyun, unleashing a cataclysmic wave of energy into the void. He extended his hand, crashing it down upon Zhang Chuyun with tremendous force. Boom. A resplendent golden hand descended. Zhang Chuyun found himself utterly suppressed. A massive handprint spanning hundreds of meters etched into the ground beneath him. At this moment, the entire world fell silent. Countless spectators held their breath, not daring to exhale, their gazes transfixed upon the scene unfolding before them. The disciple of the Tao from the Taichu Holy Land, Zhang Chuyun, had been defeated. Yan Bei had once again forged an extraordinary miracle. The myth of the invincible Holy Land has been shattered today. For thousands of years, the Eastern Domain has been under the dominion of several major sacred lands. The Holy Land's Daozi has always been regarded as an unbeatable entity in the hearts of cultivators, with no one daring to challenge him. The disparity in strength is evident when comparing the extraordinary sun with the cultivation of the Divine Palace and the Daozi of the Holy Land, who stands at the pinnacle of the Four Extremities realm. Now, the invincible legend of the Daozi has been brought to an end by the young figure before him. Could it be that he truly hails from the southern wilderness? The gazes of countless onlookers towards Yan Bei have now transformed. He is a genuine youthful sovereign. And after this grand battle, his deeds will be widely celebrated. Yan Bei stood in the void, his expression indifferent, feeling not a trace of emotion from defeating Zhang Chuyun. In fact, he felt he had not performed to his fullest potential. In his mind, there should not be anyone at the same level who could rival him. Yet today, he was awakened to a new reality. Zhang Chuyun, as a born saint, possesses boundless potential. If he can fight beyond his level, so too can others. He is not the sole genius. There exist remarkable individuals in this world who can contend with him. Although he expended little effort in vanquishing Zhang Chuyun, he gained profound insights, particularly in terms of his mental state, which has seen some enhancement. In the days to come, his cultivation will break through once more, reaching the 9th layer of the Four Extremities realm. He is now a step closer to the extraordinary. What else do you wish to say? Yan Bei's body swayed, and he instantly appeared within the massive crater beneath him, gazing at the bloodied and wretched figure of the primordial Daozi. A flicker of murderous intent surfaced in his eyes. At this moment, all eyes were fixed on the enormous handprint in the ground. Zhang Chuyun, already in a dire state, suddenly turned pale. What do you intend to do? He sensed a murderous aura emanating from Yan Bei, as the Daozi of the Holy Land, who would dare to kill him. Yet, he felt a trace of fear towards the man before him, having heard tales of Yan Bei's hands stained with the blood of countless victims, a veritable madman. If he were to disregard the consequences and truly slay him, today would spell danger for Zhang Chuyun. Yan Bei observed the Zhang Chuyun beneath him, his murderous intent gradually intensifying. After today's battle, Zhang Chuyun would undoubtedly harbor resentment towards him. If he did not eliminate him now, it would be akin to releasing a tiger back into the mountains. However, the power backing his adversary was indeed formidable, making it no simple task to act against him. Slaying Zhang Chuyun may be easy, yet shaking the foundations of the primordial Holy Land remains an unrealistic endeavor. Just as he found himself in this dilemma, a tremor suddenly rippled through the void beside him. An elderly man with white hair emerged from the depths of the space. Greetings, ancestor. The moment the old man appeared, countless disciples of the Fire Phoenix Valley bowed in reverence, their gazes filled with admiration. Ancestor. A hint of turmoil crossed Yan Bei's eyes. This was the legendary transcendent being who survived from the Phoenix Feather Holy Land a millennium ago. What terrifying level of power must this ancient transcendent possess after 1,000 years? Upon this reflection, Yan Bei slightly cupped his hands in greeting. Feng Jiutian regarded him with a nod, a gentle smile gracing his lips. It is rare to encounter a young person so composed and humble, especially one endowed with such extraordinary talent. The sparring between the two young friends today has truly been a feast for my eyes. The presence of both esteemed youths at the celestial banquet hosted by Huofeng Valley renders it a resounding success. With a benevolent smile, Feng Jiutian addressed the two. But when he uttered the word spar, his tone grew noticeably weighty. He then extended his palm, channeling a gentle force to help the fallen Zhang Chuyun back to his feet. Spar. Upon hearing Feng Jiutian's words, the crowd comprehended his intent immediately. The combat between these two young prodigies had reached a critical juncture, and he wished to prevent it from escalating further. Yan Bei gazed at Feng Jiutian, a sense of trepidation gripping his heart. The old man possessed an awe-inspiring strength and means, with just a single phrase. He had utterly quashed Yin Bei's burgeoning thoughts of hostility. Not once did he mention victory or defeat, yet he subtly praised the two as young supremes. That seemingly light remark dissipated the murderous intent that had just surged within Yin Bei. Since Feng Jiutian had declared it a spar, to persist in their confrontation would undoubtedly offend him. As the elder of Huofeng Valley, neither Yin Bei nor Zhang Chuyun wished to provoke him. If it is indeed a spar, let us leave it at that. Thank you for your guidance, esteemed elder, Yin Bei said, cupping his hands in respect towards Feng Jiutian. Yin Bei was no fool. Although Feng Jiutian had intervened to save Zhang Chuyun, he stood firmly by Yin Bei's side. Had Yin Bei truly slain Zhang Chuyun today, the repercussions would have been dire, far worse than the death of a half-saint from the Dain sacred land. Zhang Chuyun was a natural-born saint, destined to become a holy being. Should he perish here, one could only imagine the fury that would erupt from Taichu's sacred land. Thus, Feng Jiutian's intervention alleviated the temporary discord between the two, offering them a means of retreat. The banquet had commenced. And if you young ones do not mind this old man's presence, I would relish the opportunity to share a few cups with you. With a beaming smile, Feng Jiutian's murky eyes sparkled with shrewdness, and the aura of twilight that surrounded him slowly dissipated, revealing a vitality reminiscent of youth. Esteemed elder, you jest. To share a drink with you would be a privilege for us, Yin Bei replied with a smile. At that moment, a strained smile also graced Zhang Chuyun's lips as he nodded in agreement. In that case, I shall shamelessly join you young ones for a few drinks. Feng Jiutian laughed heartily and made his way towards the celestial banquet. As Feng Jiutian arrived, many prodigies were taken aback, their expressions shifting to one of reverence. Even Jin Yin felt the same. An existence of Feng Jiutian's caliber stood but a hair's breadth from the realm of saints. Even as a Daozi, it was rare to witness a true saint within the sacred lands. Thus, Feng Jiutian's appearance stirred excitement among the prodigies. At the banquet, with Feng Jiutian's presence, the atmosphere became harmonious, dispelling the earlier tension that had pervaded the gathering. Many individuals have shared their insights on cultivation, including Yin Bei, who occasionally offers his thoughts. His cultivation level surpasses that of many talented individuals present, so when he speaks of his experiences, the majority listen attentively. The challenges he discusses are common in the realm of cultivation, and his solutions often enlighten numerous aspirants. Consequently, many talented individuals approach Yin Bei with their own queries regarding their practice, and he generously provides thoughtful answers. Regardless of their status, be they saints, saintesses, or extraordinary sons, he treats everyone with equal respect, not allowing anyone's identity to diminish his regard. This behavior has garnered him considerable admiration. During the banquet, Yin Bei emerged as the focal point of attention, even overshadowing the two prominent figures present. The gazes of the other aspirants toward him were no longer filled with hostility, but rather a sense of admiration. Even Feng Jiutian regarded him with high praise, her demeanor visibly softened. Jin Yin nodded in agreement, acknowledging that some issues he had struggled to resolve were effortlessly unraveled by Yin Bei, who had indeed gained much from this discussion. However, sitting nearby, Zhang Chuyun appeared disengaged. While there was no overt conflict, he often cast venomous glances at Yin Bei whenever he spoke. Currently, he felt utterly humiliated as the disciple of the primordial Taoist, for henceforth, whenever his name was mentioned, it would be accompanied by that of Yin Bei, as he had been defeated by him. As time progressed, the banquet drew to a close, and all the aspirants rose with smiles, preparing to depart. Chapter 137. Extortion of the Taoist Brother Yin. In the past, I regarded your achievements with disdain, but it seems I have grossly underestimated you. Today's discourse has profoundly changed my perception. Jian Xian admires you. A young aspirant bearing a 3-foot green peak sword stood, cupping his hands in respect toward Yin Bei. He was Jian Xian, a disciple of the extraordinary Ling Tian sword sect. After today's discussion, his view of Yin Bei had shifted significantly. The other aspirants nodded in agreement. Indeed, Yin Bei had assisted many, providing meticulous answers to questions regardless of the asker's status. Brother Jian, you jest. I merely recounted some fundamental concepts. I hope I haven't embarrassed anyone, Yin Bei replied with a wry smile, shaking his head. There is no need for modesty, Brother Yin. You are worthy of the title of Young Supreme. I cannot compare, Jian Xian declared straightforwardly. As a sword cultivator, he valued honesty and recognized his own limitations without seeking excuses. Yin Bei regarded Jian Xian with surprise. It was rare to encounter a cultivator willing to concede their inferiority. He mentally acknowledged Jian Xian as a potential friend. Thank you, Brother Jian, for your generous praise. Should any of you have questions regarding cultivation in the future, feel free to seek me out. I shall speak candidly, Yin Bei said earnestly to the gathered aspirants, then raised his cup and drank deeply, exuding a spirit of camaraderie. With the existence of the system, coupled with the indestructible Chaos Sutra, he could effortlessly resolve any cultivation dilemma, even surpassing the renowned Feng Jiutian. Thus, it is no wonder that Yan Bei is held in such high esteem by many, for there are certain challenges that even Feng Jiutian cannot surmount. I am immensely grateful to you, Brother Yan. You shall henceforth be my idol and the aspiration I pursue throughout my life. Many prodigies raised their goblets, downing their drinks in one go, their gazes filled with reverence for Yan Bei. Witnessing this scene, Feng Jiutian could not help but nod in silent approval. Yan Bei's actions undoubtedly garnered him even greater admiration, for one cannot solely rely on strength. Life presents countless encounters, and it is impossible for any individual to manage everything alone. Thus, social connections become exceedingly vital. Should one offend everyone? What good is invincible power if it leads to a solitary existence devoid of true friends? One day, he will age and reminisce about the joyful times spent with a few close companions, moments that are irreplaceable. Thus, the banquet finally drew to a close. The prodigies rose, clasping their hands in farewell, preparing to depart. Just then, an abrupt voice shattered the serene atmosphere. Wait! Zhang Qiyun's voice resonated, his gaze fixed intently on Yan Bei. The prodigies, who were on the verge of leaving, halted in their tracks, their expressions darkening. Yan Bei, too, paused, slowly turning around. What is it that you require? All eyes converged upon Zhang Qiyun, eager to discern his intentions. He regarded the gathered crowd and scoffed. Are you truly planning to take the void divine chain from the Taichu Holy Land without consequence? At this moment, the crowd understood. This was the crux of the matter. Brother Yan, return the void divine chain to him. That is a sacred king artifact. If you take it, the Taichu Holy Land will not let this go easily. Jian Xian's voice echoed in Yan Bei's mind. Following this, several voices, as Jian Xian had indicated, sequentially entered Yan Bei's consciousness, all urging him to return the void divine chain to Zhang Qiyun, for this item was indeed a hot potato. However, they communicated through mental transmission, refraining from voicing their concerns aloud, knowing Zhang Qiyun was a disciple of the Tao and that they dared not offend him. What surprised Yan Bei most was hearing Jian Yan's voice among those urging him. He, too, had transmitted his thoughts. Yan Bei turned his head, expressing gratitude with a nod to the crowd. Had you not mentioned it, I would have nearly forgotten about this belt. At that moment, he recalled that he had just used the void divine chain as a belt. Had Zhang Qiyun not pointed it out, he might have completely overlooked it. He then unfastened the void divine chain from his waist. The onlookers were left in awe, astonished that this individual had indeed used a sacred king artifact as a mere belt. What audacity! Zhang Qiyun, witnessing the spectacle, trembled with rage. Return the void divine chain to me. Yan Bei looked at Zhang Qiyun, who was seething with anger, and couldn't help but feel a wave of amusement. This belt, no. This divine chain. Returning it to you is not out of the question, he said, elongating his tone as if pondering something. What do you mean? Zhang Qiyun retorted, his face flushed with indignation. However, Yan Bei continued, you must demonstrate some sincerity. After all, this object is currently ownerless. If I were to accidentally spill a drop of blood on it, it could lead to complications. With one hand holding the void divine chain and the other wielding a glimmering dagger, he cautiously trimmed his nails. Zhang Qiyun's brows twitched as he gazed at Yan Bei's actions. Indeed, the void divine chain was now without a master, should it recognize one. Even if he attempted to erase its imprint upon returning, the chain would still be affected. What do you want? Zhang Qiyun managed to ask, suppressing his temper. As a naturally born saint, he wielded immense power within the primordial sacred land. Yet here he was, being cornered by another. The onlookers, young prodigies themselves, stifled their laughter, sensing that Yan Bei was quite the character, able to bring a revered disciple of the sacred land to such a state of submission. How about this? If you share with me the cultivation method of the primordial light, I shall return this chain to you, Yan Bei proposed with a grin. Dream on. The primordial light is our sacred land's closely guarded secret. I can never divulge it. Zhang Qiyun erupted in fury upon hearing this demand. He was desperate, and Yan Bei, observing Zhang Qiyun's furious demeanor, realized that the chance of acquiring the primordial light was slim. Yet, he had merely been jesting, driven by curiosity about the technique. Calm down. I was just joking. How about this? If you present a substantial sum of spirit stones, say 100,000, consider it a treat for my brothers. And I shall return the chain, Yan Bei said with a smile, watching Zhang Qiyun. Upon hearing this, Zhang Qiyun's expression finally softened, though he still wore a scowl. Take it. Without hesitation, he produced a large bag of spirit stones from his storage ring and tossed it to Yan Bei, containing a staggering 10 million spirit stones. The young prodigies present were taken aback. As the bag opened, a rush of spiritual energy surged forth, leaving even Yan Bei momentarily speechless. The amount was nearly equivalent to the entire treasury of the Yunlong kingdom. To think that a disciple of the sacred land could so nonchalantly produce such wealth was indeed astounding. Yanbei couldn't help but regret not asking for more. Chapter 138. A tender moment. Restless thoughts after accepting the 10 million spirit stones. Yanbei upheld his end of the bargain and returned the void divine chain to Zhang Chuyun. Upon reclaiming the chain, Zhang Chuyun cast a cold gaze at Yanbei. Zhang, will remember today's events. We have plenty of time ahead of us. With a disdainful huff, he soared into the air, transforming into a streak of light as he departed from Huofeng Valley, unable to bear remaining there any longer. Watching Zhang Chuyun leave, Yanbei furrowed his brow slightly, uncertain whether it was wise to let him go. Yet, there was little choice. To forcefully slay him here would undoubtedly lead to greater troubles. At that time, it is likely that the ancient beings of the Taichu sacred land will emerge from their coffins to settle accounts with him. After all, a naturally born saint is a rarity, and Zhang Chuyun possesses the potential to become a great sage. Should a great sage arise from the eastern region, all forces will be reshuffled, and for the next 10,000 years, the Taichu sacred land will undoubtedly be the preeminent power in the eastern region, without exception. With that said, Brother Yan, it seems we shall meet again in the future. At this moment, Jianxian clasped his hands in a respectful gesture. Yanbei promptly returned the gesture, and soon after, the elites from various locales began to bid their farewells. As the crowd began to thin, a man clad in golden battle armor approached. I am Jin Yan, the Daozi of the Jinyang sacred land. I find you quite admirable, and I hope we may have an opportunity to spar in the future, Jin Yan stated, stepping forward and initiating conversation. Yanbei, taken aback, gazed at Jin Yan, having not anticipated such an approach. Indeed, the Daozi's reputation precedes him. It would be greatly beneficial for me to engage in a spar with you. Jin Yan nodded with a smile, looking forward to their next encounter. After speaking, he transformed into a beam of golden divine light and departed. Watching Jin Yan disappear, a smile crept across Yanbei's lips. He realized that there were indeed many intriguing individuals in this world. It seems this gathering of elites was held especially for you, Qi Ming remarked, covering her mouth and laughing. Today, all the attention was drawn to Yanbei. Aside from offending Zhang Chuyun, he had garnered the goodwill of so many, which certainly was not a loss. Yanbei managed a wry smile, shaking his head in silence. At that moment, Feng Jiutian, who had been seated in the grand hall, stepped out, accompanied by the phoenix goddess of Huofeng Valley, Feng Jiyu. Yanbei had seen Feng Jiyu at the banquet, but there were so many people around that he had not had the chance to greet her. Greetings, esteemed elder, Yanbei bowed, then turned to Feng Jiyu with a smile. I trust the goddess has been well. Feng Jiutian nodded with a smile, clearly pleased with Yanbei. Elder Bing Huang had not misjudged him. After exchanging a few casual words, Feng Jiutian took his leave. As soon as the elder departed, Feng Jiyu finally relaxed. It seems someone still remembers who I am. I am truly honored, she said, her beautiful eyes sparkling with playful jealousy. The goddess jested. I have always held you in high regard, Yanbei replied with a wry smile. Had it not been for Feng Jiyu's care for Qi Ming during the Tianyi secret realm, he would have been unable to focus on ascending the divine ladder and would not have gained the favor of the esteemed Qing Di, becoming the ruler of the Tianqing continent. Feng Jiyu pouted, her exquisite face displaying evident discontent. Qi Ming chuckled from the side. Sister Jiyu, do not be upset. Forgive him this once, and let him treat us to a meal. Realizing the implication, Yanbei quickly added, indeed, if the goddess does not mind. I happen to possess some exquisite fine wine, truly worthy of being called celestial brew. Now that is more like it. At least you know how to be sensible. Feng Jiyu replied, her lips curling into a smile. Thus, the three strolled leisurely through the Huofeng Valley, sharing tales of recent events. A quarter of an hour later. I shall not disturb you any further. Do remember to invite me for a drink next time. Feng Jiyu, unwilling to be a third wheel, bid farewell to the two. However, at the moment of parting, she cast a somewhat envious glance at Qi Ming, before soaring towards the flame sanctuary. Meanwhile, approximately 100 miles from the Fire Phoenix Valley, the void shattered, and three figures clad in silver robes emerged. The aura they exuded was terrifyingly potent. Had it not been for the complete containment of spiritual energy, the very fabric of space might have fractured. Half-saints. 3 half-saints, all hailing from the Dian Holy Land. Ahead lies the Fire Phoenix Valley. I have heard that Yanbei is within, stated one of the towering half-saints. In that case, let us enter now and capture him, so we may report back, another proposed. No, the Fire Phoenix Valley is unlike other extraordinary factions. It harbors the remnants of the Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix Saints, alongside the formations left by the Phoenix Feather Holy Land. Even a holy sovereign would find little benefit here. We cannot charge in recklessly. The half-saint at the rear spoke solemnly. Then what shall we do? If we delay, Yin Bei may escape. And finding him would be akin to searching for a needle in a haystack. The tall half-saint furrowed his brow. Currently, Yin Bei is unencumbered. His sect has relocated, leaving us without means to force him out. Even his only beloved is the goddess of Fire Phoenix Valley and a disciple of the Ice Phoenix, constantly guarded by a saintly remnant, leaving us with no opportunity to act. Let us secure the mountain gate of the Fire Phoenix Valley. Not even a mosquito shall escape. I shall now send a message to the Holy Sovereign and see how he wishes to proceed, declared the half-saint at the rear, as he released a transmission light talisman from his hand. Let it be done. Let us go. The other two half-saints concurred, vanishing from sight. In the ice and snow sanctuary of the Fire Phoenix Valley, within a loft, Yin Bei lay entwined with Qiming upon the bed. The enchanting gaze of Qiming and the disheveled sheets revealed that a fierce battle had recently transpired here. As they embraced in silence, Yin Bei appeared somewhat distracted, burdened by unspoken thoughts. Noticing this, Qiming asked, "What troubles you today?" Yin Bei, with a puzzled expression, replied, "I don't know, but I feel a sense of unease, as if something is about to occur." His right eyelid had been twitching incessantly for the past quarter hour, seemingly foretelling something ominous. Though not particularly superstitious, this disturbance unsettled him, leaving him restless and agitated. "Do not worry. This is the Fire Phoenix Valley. Master has said that even a saint cannot breach this place." Qiming reassured, propping herself up to kiss him tenderly. "Perhaps," Yin Bei sighed, attempting to dismiss his concerns. He then shifted his focus back to Qiming, and the sight of her beauty rekindled his interest. Thus, the loft resonated with intoxicating sounds of passion. Chapter 139, The Prelude to Great War. The arrival of the Holy Sovereign the following day, Yin Bei, who had been in a deep slumber, was abruptly awakened by an overwhelming aura. He hastily sat up. At that moment, Qiming also stirred from her sleep, stretching her arms and yawning, her flawless figure revealed before Yin Bei's eyes. However, he had no time to admire her beauty, for calamity had befallen the Fire Phoenix Valley. Boom! A terrifying wave of energy surged forth, sending a chill of fear coursing through Yin Bei's veins. He gazed outside in astonishment, pondering what kind of entity could possess such formidable power. "Put on your clothes and remain in the ice-snow sanctuary. I will return shortly," Yin Bei instructed Qiming. "Be careful," Qiming said, her eyes filled with concern as she watched him. Yin Bei nodded, quickly donned his attire, and with a flash, departed the loft. Upon leaving, he immediately made his way to the main hall of the ice-snow sanctuary to seek out the Ice Phoenix. However, to his dismay, she was nowhere to be found. What on earth had transpired? Yin Bei's gaze sharpened as he looked into the distance. The Ice Phoenix was but a remnant soul of a sage and required neither rest nor cultivation. She usually remained within the confines of the sanctuary and would not leave easily. What could have happened that even she had vanished? Boom. Suddenly, another wave of terrifying energy struck, causing Yin Bei's expression to change. It was not from within the valley, but from outside. Realization dawned upon him, and his expression shifted. He transformed into a streak of lightning and dashed toward the spatial connection point of the Fire Phoenix Valley. At this moment, all the elders and attendants of the Fire Phoenix Valley had gathered at the spatial connection point. The magnitude of the situation startled Yin Bei. What could have caused the entire valley to mobilize? Upon seeing Yin Bei arrive, the elders and attendants' expressions shifted dramatically. "Quickly return." The fourth elder barked at him. "What on earth is happening?" Yin Bei inquired, confusion lacing his voice. Yet, no one answered. They all gazed somberly at the luminous screen beyond. From the spatial connection point of the Fire Phoenix Valley, one could glimpse the situation outside. Yin Bei's expression turned grave as he focused on the connection point, witnessing a scene that sent his heart racing. Before him was a fiery phoenix, engulfed in flames, roaring fiercely. Nearby, a crystalline divine phoenix, exuding an aura of winter, hovered in the void. He recognized both phoenixes. They were the remnants of sages from the Fire Phoenix Valley, the Fire Phoenix and the Ice Phoenix. Opposing them stood a figure surrounded by 3,000 divine realms, radiating a terrifying presence. Each of their movements caused the void to collapse and the space to shatter. A truly horrifying sight. "My old friends, why must you force my hand? Hand him over, and I shall leave at once." The fearsome figure spoke, their voice resonating like celestial thunder, shaking the very fabric of space. "Who considers you a friend, you treacherous hypocrite?" The Ice Phoenix scoffed coldly in response. "Holy Sovereign, your methods were indeed impressive back then. Had it not been for you, I would not have ended up in this wretched state, neither human nor ghost." At this moment, Huofeng spoke, his tone unremarkable, yet seemingly laden with an inexhaustible fury, clearly reflecting his profound dissatisfaction with the Holy Sovereign. Indeed, the formidable figure encircled by 3,000 divine realms was none other than the Holy Sovereign of the Dian Holy Land, a true saint. "Old friend, I was once compelled by circumstances. The past is behind us, so why bring it up again? The Holy Sovereign sighed deeply, his expression filled with sorrow. How casually you dismiss it with that phrase. After we have lost our physical forms, leaving only a remnant of our souls to linger in this world. You think a mere sentence can brush us aside? How preposterous. At this moment, Bing Huang gazed at the Holy Sovereign with fierce indignation, as if she wished to consume him whole. Huofeng shared her sentiments, his divine flames burning with a ferocity that seemed capable of incinerating the heavens themselves. It is I who owe you, and though we shall not speak of this matter today, you must surrender Yanbei to me. I shall procure a suitable physical form for you, alleviating the guilt that has burdened my heart for a millennium, the Holy Sovereign declared after a brief silence. His presence radiated a righteous aura, and his words felt akin to the truth of the cosmos, compelling one to believe him. Yet, as individuals well acquainted with the Holy Sovereign, Bing Huang and Huofeng were far from swayed by his deceitful rhetoric. It was precisely due to their trust in him that they had once placed their backs in his care, only to be betrayed. Even their enemies had not managed to wound them, yet the Holy Sovereign, a supposed ally, had struck them from behind, leading to their downfall. Recalling these events ignited a tempest of fury within them. Had their powers not diminished, they would have already stormed the Dian Holy Land to exact retribution. Surrender Yanbei? He is the husband of my disciple. To hand him over would render me a villain like you. Bing Huang scoffed, wholly unconvinced by the Holy Sovereign's claims. It seemed the Holy Sovereign had also lost his patience. Huofeng, is Yanbei not the husband of your disciple? At this moment, Huofeng soared to great heights. While he is not my disciple's husband, I can discern that the young lady has affections for him, and this boy suits my taste as well. If you wish to lay a hand on him, you must first cross over my dead body, or else return to the Dian Holy Land. Within Huofeng Valley, Feng Zhiyue's cheeks were flushed with embarrassment, while Yanbei stood in a daze, fully aware of the trio's conversation. The terrifying saint had come for him. Simultaneously, he felt immensely grateful towards Bing Huang and Huofeng, who were willing to stand against the contemporary saint on his behalf. Stubborn fools. A millennium ago, together you claimed to rival the Saint King, yet now you are but remnants of souls. I shall see how much power remains in you. The Holy Sovereign snorted coldly, the heavens quaking in response to his formidable presence. Dealing with you should pose no challenge. Bing Huang responded with a chilling laugh. Come forth, Bing Huang. It has been 1,000 years since we last fought side by side. Now is a fitting time to reminisce about the thrill of battle. Huofeng dove down, merging with Bing Huang. Once, they were both supreme beings at the 9th level of sainthood, and together, they unleashed a fusion technique capable of contending with the Saint King. Chapter 140. The Sacred Battle. Memories of the phoenix wings above the Fire Phoenix Valley. Two divine birds were intertwining, emitting waves of terrifying fluctuations. The Saint Master stood with his hands clasped behind his back, observing this scene before him. Rather than feeling anxious, a smile graced his lips. How many years have passed? To witness you two join forces once more fills me with immense honor, he remarked with a hint of nostalgia. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix were both peak sacred beings of millennia past. Back then, he could not hope to contend with either of them, much less compel them to unleash their fusion technique. Their combined skill could rival that of sacred kings, a force of unfathomable terror. Knowing we shall strike in unison. Prepare yourself for death. The voice of the Ice Phoenix resonated with a chilling aura, laced with a tinge of murderous intent. The Fire Phoenix mirrored this sentiment. His eyes blazed with an inferno that seemed capable of incinerating the very fabric of the void. Death. Though my strength has stagnated due to the previous battle, I am still a genuine saint. With your realms having fallen to the pinnacle of half-saints, you cannot possibly be my match, the Saint Master retorted with a chuckle. Stepping towards them, the expressions of the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix grew grave. A being like you, if my true form were present, I could eliminate you with a mere gesture. Boom. As soon as the words left their lips, both the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix expelled a breath of divine essence towards the Saint Master. The heavens trembled with a resounding roar. The might of their divine breath was staggering, causing the void to ignite and freeze, a spectacle of sheer horror. With a faint smile, the Saint Master raised a hand. Boom. An overwhelming aura erupted from his being, divine light enveloping the sky, wrapping around the divine essence expelled by the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix. A deep, resonant sound echoed, and then the two energies dissipated into nothingness. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix gazed at this scene with expressions of profound dismay. Their fusion attack had been effortlessly thwarted. Is this all the strength you possess now? The Saint Master stood with hands clasped, an aura of terrifying divine light radiating from him, exuding the essence of suppression over all. Exchanging glances, the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix cried out in piercing, melodious calls that reverberated through the clouds. Their forms began to merge once more. Ah, this familiar scene has kept me waiting, the Saint Master mused. intrigued by the potential strength they would wield post-fusion. With a tremor of the void, a being of boundless terror materialized in the arena. All eyes were drawn to this entity, their gazes filled with astonishment. A creature with the head of a chicken, the neck of a serpent, the back of a mystical tortoise, and the tail of a fish, adorned in resplendent colors and colossal in size, emerged before them. A true phoenix. The fusion of the ice phoenix and fire phoenix had birthed an authentic divine bird, the phoenix. At this moment, the phoenix's eyes radiated an extraordinary brilliance, one a deep azure, the other a fiery crimson, a combination of unparalleled peculiarity. Embrace your demise, the phoenix uttered coldly, charging towards the Saint Master with lethal intent. 9 heaven strike. Boom. 9 resplendent stars suddenly appeared above the head of the phoenix, transforming into a tangible entity that enveloped the Saint Lord within. At that moment, the heavens trembled, and boundless Tao runes manifested. The Saint Lord finally took the matter seriously, emanating immeasurable holy light as he advanced directly towards the foe. Within the Fire Phoenix Valley, Yanbei witnessed this scene, his heart quivering, hands clenched tightly, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness. The catastrophic battle unfolding outside was entirely due to him, yet he found himself powerless to intervene. Once again, he felt his own inadequacy, a desperate yearning to elevate his cultivation welling up within him. After these events, he resolved to enhance his own abilities. Yanbei's gaze grew heavy, his thoughts murmuring to himself. In the external world, terrifying energy swept across the land, astonishing countless individuals in the eastern region who flocked to witness the spectacle. Yet, none dared to approach. The might of the saint was simply too formidable, the earth-shattering waves obliterating everything in their path. The battle between the Phoenix and the Saint Lord had reached a stalemate. What was particularly alarming was that the Phoenix, transformed from the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, was currently being dominated by the Saint Lord. It seemed that they had truly diminished, even in their fused form. They were no match for him. The Saint Lord laughed heartily, his tone dripping with derision. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix had once been renowned throughout the eastern region a millennium ago, with the world aware of the powerful existence within the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land and the pinnacle figures of the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix. It was precisely for this reason that the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land stood at the pinnacle of the eastern region, becoming the most formidable force. At that time, the Saint Lord was merely a novice in the Saint realm. Although he was well acquainted with the Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix, he harbored a deep admiration for their talents. Ultimately, when the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land faced calamity, he, having already succeeded to the position of Saint Lord of the Great Yin Sacred Land, rushed to their aid. Little did he expect the enemy's strength to be overwhelmingly powerful, resulting in the tragic demise of the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land's Saint King. Yet, before his death, the Saint King delivered a fatal blow to his adversary, ensuring that their Saint King could no longer engage in battle. At that time, even with the fall of the Phoenix Feather Saint King, the Sacred Land remained unbroken. For the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land still possessed the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, whose fusion into the Phoenix rendered them invincible. It took 6 peak 9th tier saints to barely hold them at bay. At that moment, the unseen forces unable to breach the Phoenix Feather Sacred Land grew anxious. They sought out the Saint Lord, promptly bringing him to the void space and forcibly suppressing him, compelling him to confront the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix. Under the threats of several saints, the Saint Lord ultimately found himself kneeling, swearing an oath to the heavenly Tao. It was the most humiliating moment of his life. Upon emerging from the void space, the Saint Lord gazed at the Phoenix still battling the enemy, his eyes filled with remorse. Yet, he had no path of retreat. He bore not only the heavenly Tao oath, but also the fate of the entire great Yin Sacred Land upon his shoulders. Thus, he acted. A holy sword, radiating cold light, materialized in the Saint Lord's grasp. With a swift thrust, the unprepared Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix were instantly pierced through their entire bodies. At that moment, the Phoenix emitted a deafening cry, a terrifying aura causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Even the Saint Lord was wounded in his sacred essence, and from that moment, his cultivation could no longer advance, forever remaining at the 3rd level of the Saint realm. Soon, the Phoenix formed by the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix began to disintegrate before separating once more, revealing a ghastly wound upon their bodies. A mark left by the Saint Lord himself. Chapter 141. The Inner Thoughts of Feng Zhiueyu. The Ice Phoenix duo could hardly believe it. Their gazes fixed in disbelief upon the Saint Lord, rendered speechless in the face of overwhelming despair. Thus, confronted by the onslaught of 6-peak Saint-level adversaries, the wounded Ice Phoenix duo found themselves devoid of any means of resistance. Before long, they were brought to the brink of death, their very forms crushed, leaving only 2 fragments of their primordial spirits. Just when they could no longer endure, a horrifying scene unfolded. The previously pinned down Huang Yu Saint King opened her eyes, a dreadful aura suppressing the very fabric of reality. She yanked the spear from her body and charged directly at the Ice Phoenix duo. With a single strike, the six-peak saint-level warriors were obliterated into a puddle of blood, their primordial spirits extinguished without a trace. In that instant, countless onlookers trembled. Even the Saint Lord turned pale, collapsing to the ground in fear. The Ice Phoenix duo's faces lit up with joy, only to be frozen in shock moments later. They realized that the eyes of the Huang Yu Saint King were hollow. Her actions were merely a manifestation of a lingering while controlling her body. She did not wish for the demise of the Ice Phoenix duo. Standing alone in the void, the Huang Yu Saint King caused the entire realm to begin to collapse under the weight of her presence. At that moment, the entirety of the Eastern Domain felt a wave of sorrow permeating the atmosphere. Blood rain began to fall, and strange phenomena erupted. The Huang Yu Saint King seized the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, now reduced to their primordial forms, and with a single gesture, a black hole formed, casting them into the boundless void. Thus, the Ice Phoenix duo managed to preserve their primordial spirits, surviving in an alternative manner, though their strength diminished, falling to the peak of the half-saint level. After sending them away, the Huang Yu Saint King turned her back to the tranquil land behind her, a long, serene sigh echoing through the heavens and earth, as she transformed into radiant light, dispersing into the cosmos. The kneeling Saint Lord trembled uncontrollably. He had nearly been scared to death at the moment the Huang Yu Saint King revived. His audacity to ambush the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix stemmed from the belief that the Huang Yu Sacred Land had reached its end, with no chance of resurgence. Even if the Ice Phoenix duo succeeded in repelling the six saints today, once their Saint King recovered, the annihilation of the Huang Yu Sacred Land would be but a matter of moments. Moreover, he had been coerced into swearing a heavenly oath if he did not act. Not only would he perish, but his own Dian's sacred land would also be obliterated by these foes. Yet, he had ultimately harmed the two. This was an irrevocable truth. Regardless of his motivations, the defeat in that battle was undeniably tied to his ambush on the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix. At this juncture, the battle between the Phoenix and the Saint Lord was gradually drawing to a close. The ground of the Fire Phoenix Valley was strewn with feathers mingled with blood. Both the Phoenix and the Holy Sovereign bore grievous wounds. The Phoenix was now stripped of many feathers, presenting a rather tragic sight. The Holy Sovereign fared little better. His body marked by numerous claw marks. Even a portion of flesh above his brow was raw, with sacred blood continually dripping from his form. "You are no match for me." The Holy Sovereign's hand reached out, striking the Phoenix once more. With a gasp, the Phoenix could endure no longer. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix's forms swiftly separated once again. Upon witnessing their division, the Holy Sovereign erupted into a maniacal laughter. What a familiar scene. Tormenting me for a millennium. Now, to achieve a semblance of release from my suppressed heart feels liberating. The Holy Sovereign appeared frenzied, his eyes glinting with murderous intent. The Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, faces etched with fury, recalled how their fusion technique had once been capable of confronting six pinnacle holy masters. Now, they were unable to contend even with a mere third-tier holy master. The disparity incited a torrent of hatred within them. "You worthless being, in my prime. A single palm strike would suffice to obliterate you." The Fire Phoenix trembled with rage, roaring towards the heavens. The Holy Sovereign, with an undeniable grin, retorted, "Alas, this is no longer your era. Surrender, Yan Bei, and out of respect for our millennium-long friendship, I shall spare your lives. Otherwise, I shall raze Fire Phoenix Valley to the ground." At that moment, terror gripped the hearts of countless individuals within Fire Phoenix Valley. With the absence of the Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix's protection, the Holy Sovereign's aura seemed poised to suppress the heavens, invoking dread among them. Yan Bei's expression darkened, a glimmer of extreme madness igniting in his eyes. "You have forced my hand. Today, I shall witness who meets their demise." He took a step forward, intent on leaving Fire Phoenix Valley. "Yan Bei, do not go out. Stop." The inhabitants of Fire Phoenix Valley gazed in shock at Yan Bei, urging him to halt. Although the entire situation stemmed from Yan Bei's actions, not a single person in Fire Phoenix Valley blamed him. Instead, they shielded him behind their ranks. Despite the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix's commands, Yan Bei discerned that the people of Fire Phoenix Valley were inherently kind-hearted. He could not allow his troubles to jeopardize their safety. "Yan Bei, stop. Going out now is akin to seeking death," Feng Zhiyue exclaimed, her expression turning to one of alarm. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she threw herself at Yan Bei, attempting to restrain him. Feeling the warmth radiating from Feng Zhiyue, Yan Bei's resolve only strengthened. "This matter began with me, and thus it shall end with me. I, Yan Bei, shall remember the kindness shown to me by Fire Phoenix Valley. Should I survive today, I shall repay it 100-fold." Yan Bei surveyed the crowd, imprinting the faces of everyone in Fire Phoenix Valley in his heart. I cannot allow you to go. What will happen to me if you die? Feng Jiue gazed at Yin Bei with tear-filled eyes, casting aside her shyness as her emotions surged forth. In that moment, Yin Bei perceived Feng Jiue's feelings for him. Astonished to realize how deeply she cared for him, he gently withdrew Feng Jiue from his embrace, extending his palm to wipe away her tears. Crying like this does not suit you. At that moment, tears once again adorned Feng Jiue's exquisite visage. If you die, I shall never live alone. In this lifetime Feng Jiue, have chosen you. From the first encounter at the Lord's residence in Tianyi City, a figure had taken root in her heart. Ultimately, after Yin Bei rescued her from the Lord's mansion in the Tianyi secret realm, and the subsequent events that unfolded, she realized that Yin Bei's presence had gradually permeated her heart. She discovered that she had fallen deeply for him, an inextricable affection that haunted her thoughts each night, where his smile danced in her mind. We cannot be together. Please take care of Qiming for me. Yin Bei chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. I must go to this battle. With that, he broke free from Feng Jiue's embrace, transforming into a streak of lightning as he dashed toward the outskirts of the Fire Phoenix Valley. Chapter 142. The birth of a new saint. Do not go out. Stop. As Yin Bei attempted to venture beyond, the inhabitants of the Fire Phoenix Valley called out to him, urging him not to act foolishly. Yet, how could they possibly restrain Yin Bei, who had reached the pinnacle of the Four Realms? His speed was astonishing, allowing him to surpass the crowd in the blink of an eye. He cast a lingering glance back at the Fire Phoenix Valley. Although he had only been there for a day, the warmth and sense of belonging he felt from the people was profound. Here, he experienced a feeling reminiscent of being at Qingyun's sect, surrounded by those who cared for him deeply, igniting a warm current within his heart. I am sorry. Allow me to bring this to an end. Yin Bei murmured softly, no longer hesitating as he stepped toward the shimmering barrier before him. At that moment, a thunderous wave erupted from deep within the Fire Phoenix Valley. The entire realm began to tremble, the symbols of the great Tao materializing, and boundless laws of order surged forth. Yin Bei's expression shifted dramatically as his pupils contracted in shock, gazing upward into the heavens. There, above the Fire Phoenix Valley, an overwhelmingly terrifying figure emerged. He appeared as a magnificent entity, standing high above and surveying the cosmos, as if the entire great Tao lay beneath his feet. This aura saint. Yin Bei's heart raced as he stared in astonishment at the figure above. Another saint had appeared. The inhabitants of the Fire Phoenix Valley also gazed upward in awe at this presence. It is the ancestor. The ancestor has attained sainthood. Elder For suddenly cried out, his voice filled with ecstatic joy. The ancestor, Feng Jiutian? At that moment, Yin Bei utilized his divine sight to unveil the true identity of the figure. He beheld a strikingly formidable man, radiating an unparalleled and terrifying aura, whose every movement disrupted the laws of the universe, instilling dread in all who beheld him. Observing the man's features, he could indeed discern traces of Feng Jiutian's youthful visage. Just then, the figure in the heavens stirred. With a resounding boom, he took a single step forward, akin to a celestial body plummeting, instantly reaching the exit of the Fire Phoenix Valley. Yin Bei watched the figure before him, his body trembling imperceptibly. At this moment, the valiant and imposing man spoke. Little one, you are still too young. Some matters are best left to us old souls. His voice, though somewhat hoarse, resonated with strength and was imbued with a tone of deep concern, complemented by a warm smile. Indeed, this man was the ancestral figure of the Fire Phoenix Valley, Feng Jiutian. Just a quarter of an hour prior, perhaps sensing the fierce battle erupting outside, he had finally shattered the last barrier within himself, transcending his limitations to become a sage. Senior, you have ascended to sainthood. Yin Bei's gaze quivered with astonishment as he fully recognized Feng Jiutian's identity. It was none other than the elder who had shared drinks and conversation with him the previous night, devoid of any airs. Feng Jiutian. In a single night, he had broken through his bottleneck, attaining the pinnacle of existence in the Eastern domain, becoming a sage. This marked Yin Bei's first close encounter with a living sage. The waves of energy emanating from Feng Jiutian filled Yin Bei with a profound sense of dread. Such a level of power was beyond his capacity to contend with. Last night, our toast stirred deep reflections within me. I must express my gratitude to you, Feng Jiutian said with a smile, his gaze gentle as he regarded Yin Bei. At the Tianjiao banquet, not only had the young prodigies sought Yin Bei's wisdom, but even Feng Jiutian had ventured to pose a few questions. To his surprise, Yin Bei had truly provided him with clarity. With the omnipotent system residing within his consciousness, the entity could effortlessly elucidate anyone's inner doubts. Thus, on this very day, Feng Jiutian's cultivation advanced, successfully breaking through the shackles to reach the realm of a sage, becoming a true sage. You jest, senior. I possess no such prowess. Yin Bei replied, shaking his head with a wry smile. Feng Jiutian chuckled lightly, and then placed a reassuring hand on Yin Bei's shoulder. Leave the rest to me. Yin Bei's expression shifted, filled with gratitude as he nodded. All the events unfolding were a result of him, yet these seniors bore him no ill will. Instead, they fervently sought to protect him, stirring immense gratitude within his heart. Although he possessed means to safeguard himself, even the potential to retain the sage here. Such methods were perilous and best avoided, lest they invite endless troubles upon the entire realm. Now that I have attained sainthood, it is time to settle the scores between us and the great Yin Holy Land, Feng Jiutian proclaimed, turning with a voice that thundered like a bell, resonating throughout the Fire Phoenix Valley, igniting fervor and excitement among countless disciples, who knelt in awe, their gazes filled with shock. Without pausing, Feng Jiutian took a decisive step and exited the Fire Phoenix Valley. In the external world, after the dissolution of the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, they were no longer a match for the sage. Had it not been for their remarkable synergy, they would have been slain on the spot. However, their situation was not much improved. Each had endured a strike from the sage, leaving their very essence teetering on the brink of collapse. Do not overestimate yourselves. In my eyes, you are no more than insignificant ants. The pinnacle of semi-saintly power can never rival that of a true saint. The Saint Lord laughed maniacally, his mirth resonating through the heavens. Despite sustaining considerable injuries, he felt no fear. At this moment, there was no one left in the Fire Phoenix Valley who could threaten him. The mightiest phoenix had been vanquished, and both the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix were on the brink of annihilation. His momentum was unstoppable. You treacherous wretch, if there is a next life, I shall slay you countless times. The voice of the Fire Phoenix thundered across the realm, revealing the depths of his unwillingness to accept his fate. In his former life, he was a formidable being at the zenith of the 9th level of saintly power. A being like the Saint Lord could have been effortlessly crushed beneath his palm. Yet now, he found himself in such a dire situation, and what stung the most was that this was at the hands of his nemesis. To be unable to avenge his grievances and instead face death from his enemy was an unbearable agony, a torment far worse than death itself. The Ice Phoenix mirrored his sentiments, her eyes brimming with defiance. Even if I must perish, I shall not die by your hand, she screeched, her piercing cry causing a semi-saint of the Dian sacred land to spew blood in shock. At this moment, Fire Phoenix locked eyes with her. They both nodded, a resolute glimmer igniting within them. They were unwilling to concede defeat, yet they could not alter the course of battle. Even in death, they refused to fall victim to this despicable coward. Chapter 143. The Annihilation of Semi-Saints. The Saint Lord's Retreat. Are you prepared to fight to the bitter end? I relish this sensation. The former Phoenix Feather Saint King felt the same, yet what came of it? He was ultimately pinned to the void. A frenzied glint ignited in the Saint Lord's eyes. The flicker of guilt that had lingered for a millennium had long since transformed into a burning hatred. He yearned for the demise of these two. Only with their deaths could the past be buried forever. How dare you insult the Saint King? You seek death. A tremendous killing intent erupted from the Ice Phoenix's eyes. The Fire Phoenix, too, was engulfed in a terrifying aura of vengeance that set the very void ablaze. The Phoenix Feather Saint King was their mentor, the one who had nurtured them since childhood until they emerged as saints, feared and revered. Behind them stood the shadow of their esteemed teacher, the Phoenix Feather Saint King. Phoenix transformation. The Fire Phoenix and Ice Phoenix shouted in unison, their bodies beginning to merge. Yet, in the next instant, thud, their expressions turned ashen, akin to deflated balloons, and their forms slowly separated. The fusion had failed. The severity of their injuries rendered them incapable of executing such a technique. The Saint Lord, witnessing this, donned a brazen smile. It appears you shall not escape your fate today. He lunged forward, his massive hand reaching for the Ice Phoenix, intent on seizing her throat. Just then, boom. An overwhelming radiance of holy light surged forth from behind the Ice Phoenix, and a colossal fist imprint met the Saint Lord's palm. Crack! A sharp sound of shattering bones echoed through the air. The Saint Lord, completely unprepared, felt his hand shatter under the force of the blow. The entire palm was almost obliterated, revealing the stark white of bone. The sacred sovereign let out a cry of despair. His gaze filled with horror as he turned to look behind the Ice Phoenix. There stood a figure radiating boundless holy light, resembling an immortal monument, blocking all surging forces. The Ice Phoenix and the Fire Phoenix displayed expressions of disbelief, swiftly turning to glimpse the source. You have attained sanctity. Upon recognizing the newcomer, the Ice Phoenix's face erupted with unrestrained joy. The Fire Phoenix, too, was equally astonished, his delight unmistakable. Indeed, the arrival was none other than Feng Jiutian, who had just broken through to the Saint Realm. Senior, you both should rest. The next phase is entrusted to me. Feng Jiutian observed the dire state of the Fire Phoenix and the Ice Phoenix, his expression darkening. He then extended his hand, placing it upon their backs. Instantly, an extraordinarily pure stream of holy essence flowed into their bodies, rapidly ameliorating their injuries. At that moment, a furious voice echoed. A saint. How could there possibly be a saint in Fire Phoenix Valley? The sacred sovereign, his gaze trembling, bellowed in rage while enduring the searing pain in his palm. A cold smile graced Feng Jiutian's lips. There is nothing impossible. Today, you shall pay for your actions. With a thunderous roar, Feng Jiutian unleashed his formidable aura, tearing through the heavens and binding the entire realm in an overwhelming dread. Sacred sovereign, meet your demise. In an instant, Feng Jiutian vanished from his position and struck fiercely toward the sacred sovereign. The sacred sovereign's countenance shifted dramatically, severely wounded as he was. A single blow could spell his doom. He hastily summoned his cultivation to withstand Feng Jiutian's assault. Just then, Feng Jiutian's lips curled into a cold smirk. You have been deceived. Just as he was about to reach the sacred sovereign, he abruptly altered his trajectory. You dare. The sacred sovereign's face turned pale with rage as he bellowed, extending his hand to intercept Feng Jiutian's move. But it was too late. A chorus of ghastly screams erupted, followed by the sky erupting in a shower of blood. I will kill you. The sacred sovereign's expression twisted into a grotesque snarl. Feng Jiutian had feigned an attack against him, only to pivot at the critical moment, annihilating 3 half-saints of the Dian Holy Land with a single strike. As a saint, Feng Jiutian's aura sealed the heavens, rendering those half-saints utterly incapable of escape, obliterated into a mist of blood by his palm. With 3 half-saints slain, along with the previously fallen Wu Bao, the Dian Holy Land had lost 4 half-saint level powerhouses in the span of a mere month. Even the Holy Land was gravely weakened. Furthermore, with the sacred sovereign heavily injured, should the Jinyang Holy Land and Taichu Holy Land emerge now, even the sacred sovereign would be at risk of being ensnared here. Killing me? You likely lack the capability. Feng Jiutian scoffed coldly, no longer feigning, and charged directly at the sacred sovereign. The sacred sovereign's eyes turned crimson, filled with murderous intent, as he engaged Feng Jiutian in a fierce clash. The heavens trembled, countless spaces shattered, and the energy of battle swept across the land, suppressing all living beings within a 1,000-mile radius to the ground. After a series of clashes, Feng Jiutian retreated 5 steps, while the Holy Sovereign fell back 2. Feng Jiutian's expression grew heavy. The Holy Sovereign was ultimately a being of the 3rd layer of the Saint Realm, and even in his severely wounded state, Feng Jiutian found it impossible to vanquish him in a short span of time. He could only wear him down gradually. The Holy Sovereign's countenance was exceedingly grim. His internal energy was nearly depleted, and the recent exchanges had been propelled by sheer rage, almost causing him to lose his reason. The demise of 3 semi-saints had ignited a fury within him. He was consumed by an intense desire to slay Feng Jiutian, his animosity nearly rivaling that directed towards the Ice Phoenix duo. Following today's battle, the once mighty Dian Holy Land would plummet to become the weakest among the 3 holy sites. Come, let us continue the fight. Is it too much for you to endure after slaying merely 3 semi-saints? Feng Jiutian's gaze flickered, clearly unwilling to allow the Holy Sovereign to escape. He sought to provoke the fury within him. The Holy Sovereign's chest heaved with rage. He even contemplated devouring Feng Jiutian alive. However, he was not a fool and was acutely aware of his current predicament. Although his realm surpassed that of Feng Jiutian, his grievous injuries rendered him incapable of continuing the battle. Should he persist, the moment his internal energy was entirely expended would herald his demise. Fire Phoenix Valley. Very well. I shall remember you. Once my wounds are healed, I will return to slay you. The Holy Sovereign, seething with fury, harbored a look of resentment in his eyes. Having failed to capture Yanbei, nor slay the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, with the Dian Holy Land having lost 3 semi-saints and himself gravely injured. What was even more terrifying was that Fire Phoenix Valley had birthed yet another saint. From any perspective, the Holy Sovereign's expedition had resulted in significant losses. Not only had he failed to exact a toll on his enemies, but they had also grown stronger. Next time, it was likely that he would not be the one attacking Fire Phoenix Valley, but rather the Ice Phoenix and her companions, bearing an unstoppable momentum, would assault the Dian Holy Land. Contemplating this, the Holy Sovereign's complexion oscillated between green and red, nearly causing him to spew blood. Boom. In a fit of rage, he struck the mountain gate of Fire Phoenix Valley with a palm, shattering the 3 characters inscribed upon it. Having done so, the Holy Sovereign no longer lingered in battle and directly tore through the void, making his escape back to the Dian Holy Land. Chapter 144. Arrival at Dian Holy Land. At the mountain gate of Fire Phoenix Valley, the Holy Sovereign had already fled, leaving behind a ravaged landscape. The towering peaks of Fire Phoenix Valley had been leveled to the ground, and the once majestic palaces had been reduced to dust. Witnessing this scene, Feng Jiutian's expression turned exceedingly grim. Fire Phoenix Valley was his brainchild, and today marked the first day of his ascension to sainthood, yet such calamity had befallen it. At that moment, the elders and disciples of Fire Phoenix Valley emerged from their inner world. Yin Xiaoyu, would you dare accompany me to the Dian Holy Land? Suddenly, Feng Jiutian turned to Yin Bei and inquired. A tremor coursed through the crowd upon hearing this. A trip to the Dian Holy Land? Yin Bei was momentarily taken aback. But upon meeting Feng Jiutian's fiery gaze, he felt a chill run through his heart. He began to grasp Feng Jiutian's intent. Since the Holy Sovereign dared to wreak havoc in Fire Phoenix Valley, why should Feng Jiutian hesitate to strike at the Dian Holy Land? In the sacred realm of Dian, the younger generation had long desired to behold its grandeur. Yin Bei, with fervent eyes, expressed his eagerness, an aura of formidable intensity radiating from him. Feng Jiutian nodded in agreement, declaring, "Then let us proceed. Today, I shall witness how the Dian sacred land dares to obstruct me." With a thunderous clap, Feng Jiutian struck forth, shattering the void and unveiling layers of temporal tunnels, into which he stepped without hesitation. Yin Bei, startled, quickly followed suit. The Dian sacred land was enveloped in ethereal mists, suffused with celestial energy, its towering peaks standing majestically, with cranes dotting the landscape, reminiscent of a paradise on earth. At this moment, the sacred realm lay in tranquil silence, its disciples having retreated within, for a decree had just been issued, sealing the sacred land for 3 years. Upon hearing this announcement, the disciples were filled with disbelief. The battle between the Holy Sovereign and the Fire Phoenix Valley had yet to be made public, leaving the disciples perplexed as to why the flourishing Dian sacred land would suddenly impose such a lengthy closure. Before they could ponder further, a cataclysmic roar shattered the tranquility. A terrifying figure descended from the heavens, exuding an overwhelming presence. Sensing this aura, every disciple trembled. A saint had arrived. In the eastern domain, saints were exceedingly rare. Even those within the sacred land seldom encountered one, causing countless disciples to gaze in astonishment at the figure in the void. Feng Jiutian remained unfazed, his consciousness expanding like a tempest, enveloping the entirety of Dian's sacred land. "Holy Sovereign, reveal yourself," he bellowed, his voice reverberating through the firmament, causing the very skies to rumble. To the disciples below, it struck like thunder, leaving many pale, some even spitting blood. In that instant, another formidable aura erupted from the Dian sacred land, and the Holy Sovereign emerged, his expression dark and foreboding. "Feng Jiutian, do you seek death?" The Holy Sovereign's demeanor was as grim as a storm cloud, his gaze icy as he fixed it upon Feng Jiutian. Without uttering a word, Feng Jiutian raised his hand and struck. A cataclysmic explosion of energy ensued, obliterating the mountain gate of the sacred land, leveling a peak in an instant. Yin Bei had now arrived, standing behind Feng Jiutian, his expression one of shock. Such was the might of a saint. The recently destroyed peak was no ordinary mountain. It was adorned with intricate runes, its fortitude so great that even extraordinary beings would struggle to inflict damage upon it. Yet now, it lay utterly flattened by a mere blow from Feng Jiutian. The power of a saint was immeasurable, although Feng Jiutian was a newly ascended saint. The strength within him surged like a tidal wave, capable of turning vast expanses of land to ash with but a fraction of his might. "You seek death." The Holy Sovereign's fury ignited upon witnessing the destruction of his mountain gate. When had the Dian sacred land ever endured such humiliation? The very entrance had been shattered. The Holy Sovereign extended his hand, launching a counterattack toward Feng Jiutian, who met it head-on without trepidation. A cataclysmic shockwave erupted, fracturing the very fabric of the void. With a single strike, the countenance of the sacred sovereign turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His injuries were far too severe. This clash exacerbated his internal wounds, rendering him unable to suppress the pain any longer. Feng Jiutian's expression also turned ashen, but it swiftly returned to normal within a moment. At this juncture, countless individuals from the Dian sacred land displayed looks of horror. The once invincible sacred sovereign had sustained injuries. This was far from good news for them. All disciples of the sacred land trembled internally, gazing at Feng Jiutian's figure with a hint of trepidation. The sacred sovereign's expression was exceedingly grim. He hastily retreated to the sacred land, unwilling to confront Feng Jiutian head-on. His injuries had worsened significantly. Without timely treatment, his cultivation might regress. Just moments ago, he had been brimming with confidence. How had he now become a timid turtle? A look of disdain crossed Feng Jiutian's face as a terrifying aura swept across the heavens and the earth. The sacred sovereign's visage was a portrait of despair. Were it not for his grievous injuries, Feng Jiutian would not stand a chance against him. A surge of anger and resentment emanated from the sacred sovereign as he clenched his fists, his face aflame with fury. Feng Jiutian smiled knowingly, his gaze icy. Though you are 2 minor realms above me, you shall remain stagnant for eternity. Perhaps I may not be your match today, but in a few years, when I reach your realm, a single strike will suffice to defeat you. The entire world fell silent, and all present could sense the immense confidence radiating from Feng Jiutian. Even Yan Bei felt a flicker of inspiration. As cultivators, we must harbor an indomitable spirit, capable of overcoming all adversities. At that moment, his state of mind ascended once more. Boom! A powerful aura erupted, and he unexpectedly broke through, reaching the threshold of the half-transcendent realm. He was now but a step away from becoming a true transcendent powerhouse. Everyone's attention shifted to Yan Bei. Many had previously seen his likeness and could recognize him instantly. Half-transcendent. The disciples of the sacred land gazed at Yan Bei in astonishment. How little time had passed since Yan Bei had ascended from the four-polar realm to the half-transcendent realm. Given him a little more time, none would be able to restrain him. At this moment, the sacred sovereign's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he regarded Yan Bei, sensing a profound sense of threat emanating from him. What a remarkable youth, achieving such heights at such a tender age. I cannot help but admire you. Feng Jiutian smiled, patting Yan Bei on the shoulder, clearly pleased. In his 20s, he had only just entered the Yuan Shen realm, while Yan Bei had already reached the half-transcendent realm. An incomparable feat. This is precisely why the phrase comparison breeds envy holds true. Chapter 145. The cunning old and young Feng Jiutian. Do you truly wish to perish together today? The sacred sovereign bellowed, his gaze icy. Perish together? You think you can come to my Huofeng Valley, act recklessly, and then simply leave unscathed? It won't be that easy, Feng Jiutian retorted with a cold smile. Today, he intended to demonstrate to the world that Huofeng Valley was not a place to be trifled with, not even by the sacred land. What do you propose? The sacred sovereign's expression was grave, his face a mask of displeasure. Currently, he finds himself in a state of passivity, severely injured and devoid of the strength to continue fighting. Even if he were cornered at the sacred ground, he would be incapable of confronting his foes, a situation that leaves him feeling exceedingly constrained. It is merely a case of returning the favor. You shattered the gates of my mountain. And if I were to let it go unpunished, how could my Fire Phoenix Valley maintain its standing in the eastern region? Feng Jiutian snorted coldly, extending his hand. Boom. With a series of powerful strikes, he reduced the gates of the Dayan sacred land to rubble, even decapitating the ancestral statue that symbolized the sacred site. Stop! The sacred sovereign bellowed in fury, but the intensity of his emotions aggravated his injuries, causing blood to trickle from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Feng Jiutian paid no heed to the sacred sovereign's pleas, unleashing a torrent of strikes that leveled several peaks to the ground. After executing this destruction, some of the fury within him finally began to dissipate. Yan Bei, witnessing the devastated Dayan sacred land, could not help but twitch at the corners of his mouth. It was only at this moment that he realized the elder Feng Jiutian harbored such a deep grudge. Just after the sacred sovereign had shattered the gates of Fire Phoenix Valley, Feng Jiutian had come here to exact revenge. Our Fire Phoenix Valley shall not be subjected to humiliation. If you dare to trespass again, the next encounter shall not be so simple. Feng Jiutian's gaze swept across the realm with an icy demeanor, instilling fear in all who met his eyes. The sacred sovereign, his face ashen, remained silent. Any words he uttered would seem feeble and impotent, for even he was now forced to cower within the sacred grounds, relying on the array to fend off Feng Jiutian. Otherwise, he too would meet a grim fate. Observing that no one dared to speak, Feng Jiutian let out a cold snort, preparing to depart with Yan Bei. At that moment, a figure emanating a powerful aura emerged from the Dayan sacred land. It was a young man, exuding an extraordinary presence, reminiscent of a youthful emperor. Feng Jiutian's gaze sharpened upon seeing the newcomer, yet he refrained from making a move. The Daozi has emerged from seclusion. The members of the Dayan sacred land trembled upon recognizing the youth, revealing concern in their eyes. This individual was none other than the Daozi of the Dayan sacred land, Li Xiuyuan. However, this Daozi was somewhat different from those of the other two sacred lands. He was considerably older, having practiced for over 50 years. Yet, for cultivators, 50 years is not deemed old. As long as one is under a century, they are considered part of the younger generation. Li Xiuyuan possessed a youthful appearance, akin to that of a 17 or 18-year-old, making it difficult to perceive that he was already 50. Return. The sacred sovereign's expression shifted dramatically as he bellowed, urging Li Xiuyuan to retreat to the Dayan sacred land. With Feng Jiutian lurking outside, should this fellow choose to strike at Li Xiuyuan, even if he possessed 10 lives, it would not suffice. However, Li Shuyuan did not turn back. Instead, he faced Feng Jutian head-on. His gaze was fearless and unwavering as he confronted Feng Jutian directly. All present were stunned by this scene. Mere courage of this caliber was enough for people to boast about for a lifetime. To face a saint with such audacity was indeed rare. Even Feng Jutian's gaze flickered as he regarded Li Shuyuan, sensing a formidable will emanating from him. We, the sacred sovereign and your dying sacred land, are adversaries. Do you not fear death by emerging now? Feng Jutian's gaze sharpened, and an overwhelming aura surged from his eyes, resembling a divine being that commanded respect and fear. Li Shuyuan trembled, as if burdened by immense pressure, and after a long pause, managed to exhale, as a sage. You surely would not strike against a mere junior like myself. His words placed a significant label upon Feng Jutian, for indeed, a sage should not act arbitrarily. Should Feng Jutian choose to attack him today, it would set a precedent allowing the sage to strike against the juniors of Huafeng Valley in the future. Such a conflict between the disciples of both factions would lead to devastating casualties, shattering the delicate balance within the cultivation world, a scenario that all wished to avoid. Feng Jutian remained silent, his gaze fixed on Li Shuyuan, keen to discern his intentions. At this moment, Li Shuyuan felt a wave of relief. He had wagered correctly. He understood that Feng Jutian would not harm him. As a disciple of the sacred land, he naturally harbored grand ambitions, and witnessing his sacred ground being so insulted, he could no longer endure. Although he was no match for the sage, his focus shifted not to Feng Jutian, but to the figure beside him, Yan Bei. You are the one who defeated Zhang Chuyan, Yan Bei. I challenge you now. Will you dare to fight me on the life and death platform? Li Shuyuan's eyes narrowed as he questioned Yan Bei with fervor. The life and death platform. To ascend this arena, one must sign a contract of life and death, whatever transpires within. Be it maiming or killing, no one can hold the other accountable. Typically, those who step onto the life and death platform harbor deep-seated grudges and wish to avoid implicating their respective factions. Before Yan Bei could respond, Li Shuyuan unleashed his own aura and continued, my cultivation level is also at the threshold of the extraordinary realm, on par with you. I trust that you, hailed as the foremost prodigy of the Eastern Domain, will not evade this battle. His tone dripped with provocation, openly acknowledging Yan Bei's status as the region's greatest talent. This declaration served Li Shuyuan's purpose regardless of whether Yan Bei accepted the challenge. Should Yan Bei engage, he would seize the opportunity to eliminate him. Conversely, if Yan Bei chose to withdraw, it would suggest fear, allowing Li Shuyuan to leverage this moment to bolster his own reputation and restore the prestige of the Da Yan sacred land. Yan Bei's expression remained composed. At the threshold of the extraordinary realm, Li Shuyuan's achievement at 50 years of age elicited no undue surprise among those present. Elder, do you believe I should accept his challenge? Yan Bei inquired, raising an eyebrow, not immediately acquiescing but rather gazing thoughtfully at Feng Jutian. Feng Jutian seemed to grasp Yan Bei's intent. You have cultivated for 50 years, while young Yan is barely over 20. There is no reason for us to acquiesce to such a demand, he remarked with a subtle smile. The elder speaks wisely. I share this sentiment. Yan Bei replied with a grin. He then turned to Li Shuyuan and stated, unless you demonstrate some sincerity, why should I risk my life to engage in a battle? I am not so idle as to entertain such folly. The synergy between the elder and the youth was seamless, a blatant act of extortion. Chapter 146, A Contest of Life and Death in the Sacred Land of Dayan. Li Shuyuan stood rooted to the spot, momentarily perplexed by the intentions of the two individuals before him. Suddenly, he felt a subtle movement in his ears as a divine thought penetrated his consciousness, and in an instant, enlightenment dawned upon him. Between you and me, there exists an irreconcilable enmity. Why not resolve our differences on the stage of life and death, thereby determining both victor and fate? Li Shuyuan spoke again, his voice resonating with an indomitable spirit, as if he could shatter all barriers of the world. At that moment, several disciples of the sacred land of Dayan were taken aback, their expressions shifting as anticipation for the impending duel on the stage of life and death began to brew. However, at that very instant, Yan Bei appeared utterly disinterested. I have no interest, he declared. Upon hearing Yan Bei's words, Li Shuyuan's gaze turned anxious. The sacred land of Dayan had sustained significant losses. If they failed to retain Yan Bei, it would indeed be a colossal setback. Not only was Li Shuyuan flustered, but even the saint's eyes reflected a hint of urgency. Yan Bei must be retained today. Otherwise, the repercussions could be dire, potentially surpassing the threat posed by Feng Jutian. What must I do for you to agree to a duel? Li Shuyuan asked, his expression grim. This prompted a flicker of interest in Yan Bei's eyes. If you present me with a sacred artifact, I might reluctantly consider engaging in battle with you. A gasp swept through the assembly at the mention of a sacred artifact. Yan Bei's audacity was astounding, boldly demanding such a treasure. The disciples of the sacred land of Dian erupted with indignation. How dare you? Do you think sacred artifacts grow on trees? Li Shuyuan, incensed, retorted, if it were any other request, I might have entertained the notion. But a sacred artifact is a priceless treasure even within the sacred land. How could I simply bestow one upon an adversary? Then it seems there's no helping it. Senior, let us depart, Yin Bei said, feigning helplessness as he casually turned to leave. The disciples of the sacred land grew increasingly agitated. Li Shuyuan turned to the saint, who wore a conflicted expression, before nodding in agreement. Wait, he called out, halting Yin Bei in his tracks. A peculiar smile crept onto Yin Bei's lips as he turned back, his expression devoid of emotion. What? Has your mind changed? Seeing Li Shuyuan's troubled visage, Yin Bei couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. The bait had been taken. If he did not exploit the sacred land of Dian today, his efforts would be in vain. Are you certain that granting you a sacred artifact would compel you to duel with me on the stage of life and death? Li Shuyuan asked, his demeanor icy. I am a man of honor. Would I lie? Yin Bei replied, his tone earnest and resolute. At this juncture, Li Shuyuan exchanged glances with the saint once more, who then waved his hand. With a resounding boom, a beam of holy light tore through the void, descending before Li Shuyuan. It was a sacred sword, exuding a fierce aura. This sword, named Qiuyu, was indeed a sacred artifact. If you engage in battle with me on the stage of life and death, I shall present this to you, Li Shuyuan proclaimed, wielding the Qiuyu with the grace of an unparalleled sword master, a formidable presence enveloping him. Observing the Qiuyu, a smile graced Yin Bei's lips. Very well, if that is the case, I shall accept your challenge, lest the world think I fear you. At this moment, the aura emanating from Yin Bei gradually became sharp and fierce, exuding a terrifying wave that sent shivers down one's spine. In response, Li Shuyuan's heart bloomed with joy. He had finally achieved his desire. As for bestowing Yin Bei with a sacred sword, that was merely a ruse. Even if he granted Yin Bei the sword, as long as he could slay him on the life and death platform, the sacred sword would revert to his possession, achieving a double victory. Then let us settle our fates on the life and death platform, Li Shuyuan exclaimed, his expression shifting with exhilaration. Suddenly, the heavens trembled, and a colossal battle platform descended from the sky, summoned forth by an extraordinary being. Without hesitation, Li Shuyuan leaped onto the platform, shouting, "Come down and fight." Observing Li Shuyuan's eagerness, a smile crept across Yin Bei's lips. After living for so many years, he had never encountered someone so hastily courting death. Shaking his head, Yin Bei also descended onto the platform. At that moment, 2 crimson contracts floated into their hands, the life and death decree. Yin Bei cast a cursory glance at the contents, which dictated that neither party could leave the platform until the battle concluded, otherwise, they would face immediate demise. Thus, once the life and death platform was activated, only one of them could emerge alive. Li Shuyuan, upon reading the decree, showed no hesitation and swiftly pressed a drop of his essence blood onto it. Instantly, the decree glowed with a menacing red light, radiating an eerie aura. In contrast, Yin Bei stood with his arms crossed, remaining still and unperturbed. Why have you not signed? Li Shuyuan asked, urgency lacing his tone. He feared that Yin Bei might reconsider, as this was a prime opportunity to eliminate him. If Yin Bei were to escape this time, he would undoubtedly pose a grave threat to the great Yin sacred land in the future. Thus, Yin Bei had to die today. Li Shuyuan was confident in his ability to slay Yin Bei. Otherwise, the sacred lord would not have allowed him to act recklessly. Have you forgotten something? Yin Bei replied coolly. Something? Li Shuyuan's mind raced, and with gritted teeth, he tossed the Qiuyu sacred sword towards Yin Bei. Here. Upon acquiring the Qiuyu sacred sword, Yin Bei nodded in satisfaction and then drew a drop of his essence blood from his fingertip. Boom. In that instant, the heavens roared as if bearing witness to this moment. The entire life and death platform erupted with a terrifying crimson glow, and a blood-red mark appeared on the foreheads of both Yin Bei and Li Shuyuan. Concurrently, a vast power enveloped the entire platform, preventing any external interference in their battle. Feng Jiutian furrowed his brow. The power of the life and death platform was exceedingly formidable. Based on his instincts, even he could not breach it in a short time. The life and death platform was a treasure brought back from other realms by the progenitor of the great Yin sacred land, possessing an extraordinary origin. Seeing Yin Bei sign the life and death decree, a smile appeared in Li Shuyuan's eyes. Even the sacred lord within the great Yin sacred land finally breathed a sigh of relief at this moment. The threat posed by Yin Bei is indeed formidable. Now that he has become an adversary, it is only a matter of time before he becomes a significant source of trouble if not dealt with decisively. I have never harbored any doubts regarding Li Shuyuan's ability to triumph over Yin Bei, for I am well aware of the prowess of my own sect. Li Shiyuan has now reached the threshold of the extraordinary realm, mastering the supreme swordsmanship with an abundance of hidden cards. Those of the same realm simply cannot contend with him. Chapter 147. Breaking through in battle, aspiring to the extraordinary upon the life and death arena being activated. Li Shiyuan no longer concealed his intentions. It appears that the so-called first prodigy of the Eastern Domain is rather unremarkable, with a mere provocation. He obediently steps forth to meet his demise. How laughable. His expression turned icy, a mocking smile gracing his lips. Yan Bei, unable to deny his amusement, retorted, "Do you possess such confidence that you have me at your mercy?" "Naturally," Li Shiyuan replied. Without a guarantee of victory, who would dare to rashly enter the life and death arena? At this moment, he no longer concealed his power, and a torrent of energy surged forth from him, instantly creating a formidable aura in the arena. This aura, having reached the threshold of the extraordinary realm, he had begun to comprehend the power of domains, albeit unable to fully unleash it. Rather, it manifested as an aura akin to a domain. Within Li Shiyuan's aura, everything was subjected to his intimidation, perpetually suppressing his foes. In that instant, Yan Bei felt a pressure, subtle yet palpable, weighing down upon him. Raising his hand to gauge the pressure he felt, he chuckled nonchalantly. Just recently having advanced to the threshold of the extraordinary realm, he had yet to grasp the mysteries of the aura. However, could Li Shiyuan truly defeat him with mere aura? How preposterous. It is worth noting that even the extraordinary powerhouse, Shui Haoyan, in his attempts to use domain power against Yan Bei, found it utterly ineffective. And now, Li Shiyuan thought to rely on this trifling aura? At that moment, a thunderous command erupted. "Kneel." Li Shiyuan glared fiercely, extending his hand towards Yan Bei with overwhelming force. Instantly, an extremely sharp aura radiated from him, and the atmosphere around him grew even more terrifying, as if he intended to compel Yan Bei to kneel through sheer pressure. Yet, he was clearly indulging in fanciful notions. Yan Bei, expressionless, stood rooted in place, regarding Li Shiyuan as if he were a fool. The aura Li Shiyuan wielded was negligible compared to Shui Haoyan's domain power, akin to a firefly competing with the brilliance of the moon. At this juncture, it seemed Li Shiyuan's confidence was wavering. His hand became rigid in midair. Why did reality diverge so drastically from his expectations? He had anticipated that even if Yan Bei would not kneel before his aura, he would at least be forced to retreat a few steps. Yet now, his aura had failed to even stir the hem of Yan Bei's garments, leaving Li Shiyuan's countenance grim. If that is the case, let us engage in battle. With a resounding shout, a long sword materialized in Li Shiyuan's grasp, and he swiftly slashed forth. Whoosh! The void shattered as a terrifying sword energy, resembling a vibrant rainbow, cleaved through space, hurtling directly towards Yan Bei. Yan Bei let out a disdainful snort, fingers coming together, wielding his hand as a sword, and he too struck out. Boom! Two energies collided in the air, unleashing a terrifying wave of force. However, both individuals remained rooted in place, motionless. This maneuver was merely a test of strength. Yet, a flicker of impatience appeared in Yan Bei's eyes. Enough of this game. It's time to eliminate you and return to the Phoenix Valley. Now that they had entered the arena of life and death and acquired a sacred sword, he no longer concealed his aura. Boom! A dreadful presence surged from Yan Bei, awakening like a slumbering primordial beast, radiating an extraordinarily formidable wave. This aura was even more potent than that of Li Shiyuan. As Li Shiyuan sensed the aura emanating from Yan Bei, his expression turned grave. Nevertheless, he remained undaunted, for he still held hidden cards. Die! Yan Bei bellowed, unleashing a mighty punch. Boom! A terrifying golden fist imprint shattered the void, creating a harrowing scene. Li Shiyuan summoned the sacred sword to counter Yan Bei's assault. Yet, Yan Bei's fist seemed even more indomitable than the sacred artifact itself, crashing against the sword and producing a deafening roar. Li Shiyuan's face paled as he was sent flying backward, shock evident in his gaze as he stared at his trembling hand. The backlash from the sacred sword was overwhelmingly powerful, leaving him secretly alarmed. Not enough, again. Yan Bei appeared dissatisfied and launched another attack. After several exchanges, Li Shiyuan found himself completely on the defensive against Yan Bei's relentless onslaught, unable to counter at all. This left him utterly stunned. He prided himself on being invincible within his realm, yet faced with Yan Bei, he couldn't even muster a response. It was simply unbearable for him to accept. Outside the arena, the Saint Sovereign wore a grim expression. He was well aware of his disciple's capabilities, and witnessing Li Shiyuan being utterly suppressed by Yan Bei was astonishing. However, before entering the arena, he had communicated with Li Shiyuan, which was why he allowed him to confront Yan Bei. After all, the Da Yin Holy Land was in turmoil, with 4 semi-saints perished and himself gravely injured, Recovery would take years. If anything else befell his disciple, it would plunge the entire Dayan Holy Land into chaos. Meanwhile, the disciples of the Dayan Holy Land watching the battle paled in countenance. The strongest disciple in their eyes was currently being overwhelmed. Each of Yin Bei's punches struck like a hammer to their hearts, causing them immense distress. In the arena of life and death, Li Shuyuan was utterly exasperated. Facing the tempestuous barrage of attacks, he could only barely defend himself. Even his usually composed demeanor faltered under the pressure. With a focused gaze, Li Shuyuan launched a punch to collide with Yin Bei's fist. Boom. He was propelled like a cannonball, crashing against the barrier of the arena. This is the extent of the Holy Land's disciples' power? Yin Bei remarked coldly. In his view, Li Shuyuan's strength was inferior to that of Zhang Chuyun. After all, Zhang Chuyun had once wielded the radiance of Tai Chu, compelling him to retreat temporarily. Li Shuyuan struggled to rise from the ground. His face darkened. It was not that he lacked strength. Rather, Yin Bei had grown stronger. Having stepped into the threshold of the extraordinary realm, Yin Bei's internal power had undergone a subtle transformation, rendering him vastly different from before. If Zhang Chuyun were to encounter him now, he would likely falter within a mere breath. You have forced my hand. Li Shuyuan's expression twisted with ferocity as he soared into the air, his gaze fixed ahead, a terrifying aura awakening within him. Yin Bei observed this scene with a furrowed brow. Boom. Li Shuyuan's aura surged, hinting at a possible breakthrough into the extraordinary realm. He was attempting to shatter his limits amidst battle. At this moment, everyone in the Dayan sacred land was taken aback. A breakthrough in the heat of battle. If Li Shuyuan truly achieved a breakthrough on the life and death platform, his powers would undergo a radical transformation. At that point, Yin Bei, standing at the brink of the extraordinary realm, would find himself in grave danger. Although the gap between the threshold of the extraordinary and the extraordinary realm itself was merely a hair's breadth, the chasm between them was as vast as the heavens and the earth, insurmountable. While there have been many prodigies throughout history capable of transcending multiple realms, such feats were typically reserved for the ordinary. Despite Li Shuyuan's talent not matching Yin Bei's, anyone who attained the position of a disciple in the sacred land was far from mediocre. Reaching the threshold of the extraordinary realm at the age of 50 was no small feat, and now he aspired to transcend it. Such giftedness was indeed remarkable in the Eastern domain. The transition from the four-extreme realm to the extraordinary realm was critical. Many powerful individuals had spent their entire lives ensnared in this realm, dying in despair. Yin, my friend, you must stop him. He cannot be allowed to ascend. At that moment, standing outside the life and death platform, Feng Zhoutian's gaze shifted, urgency coloring his voice as he shouted at Yin Bei. Yin Bei understood the gravity of the situation and transformed into a fleeting shadow, charging towards Li Shuyuan. A finger to subdue the heavens. Boom. A colossal finger descended upon Li Shuyuan with the intent to suppress him. But at that instant, boom. A tremendous, earth-shattering force erupted from Li Shuyuan, instantly obliterating the incoming finger. In that moment, the heavens roared, the light of the great path flickered, and divine radiance cascaded down as if to celebrate his rise. An aura transcending all worldly matters surged forth from the life and death platform. Witnessing this spectacle, Feng Zhoutian's pupils dilated in shock, his expression shifting dramatically. This is bad. Li Shuyuan has truly succeeded in his ascension. Feng Zhoutian attempted to reach out with his hand to pull Yin Bei from the life and death platform, but as he drew near, a blood-red light erupted from the platform, repelling his hand. At that moment, within the Dayan sacred land, the sacred sovereign erupted into maniacal laughter. Feng Zhoutian, even you have moments of urgency. Feng Zhoutian's expression darkened, concern etched across his face as he gazed at the figure within the life and death platform. Li Shuyuan stood suspended in the void, his gaze fixed upon his hands, his countenance radiating with exhilaration. This was the essence of the extraordinary, a power magnified manifold beyond what he had just experienced. In this moment, he felt as though everything within the realm of life and death was firmly within his grasp. Not a whisper of movement could elude his perception. Domain. With his ascension, the force of his aura had successfully transformed into a domain. Now, the entirety of the life and death stage was enveloped within his sphere of influence. He felt as if he could effortlessly vanquish Yin Bei with a mere flick of his wrist. Do you have any final words? Li Shuyuan asked, a smile playing on his lips as he regarded Yin Bei. Having broken through to a new realm, he felt assured of victory, his spirits soaring. Yin Bei remained unmoved. His expression impassive as he replied coolly, whether you have ascended to the extraordinary matters little. Otherwise, the fight would indeed be tedious. The moment these words escaped his lips, an audible gasp echoed among the disciples of the Dayan Holy Land. How audacious! Even with Master Daozi having ascended to the extraordinary realm, he exhibited not the slightest trepidation and dared to utter such brazen words. Even Feng Zhutian, at that moment, felt a flicker of astonishment in his gaze. Despite his own elevation to sagehood, he was taken aback by Yan Bei's audacity. What kind of formidable confidence must one possess to make such statements? Such arrogance was tantamount to courting death. Li Xian's eyes narrowed with icy intensity as he raised his grand sword to his forehead, bellowing, "Sword domain, arise." Boom. In that instant, the heavens and earth shifted, and spiritual energy surged violently. The swirling energy coalesced in the air, forming countless battle swords that crisscrossed the arena. A potent aura of sharpness sweeping across the cosmos. This was Li Shiyuan's domain, sword domain. All swords returned to their origin. He roared. And with a sweeping motion of his hand, the myriad battle swords covering the life and death stage cascaded towards Yan Bei like a torrential storm. Yan Bei gazed at the multitude of swords surging towards him, his eyes widening in astonishment. Such a grand spectacle was a first for him. He had anticipated that Li Shiyuan's domain would exert pressure upon him akin to that of Shui Haoyan. Yet, at this moment, he realized that Li Shiyuan's domain was utterly distinct from others. Each of the swords materializing in the void radiated an intensely sharp aura. The Chaos Seed Green Lotus. A peculiar wave emanated from Yan Bei, and a blue lotus began to bloom gently beside him. In that instant, Yan Bei's presence vanished from Li Shiyuan's domain, as if he had slipped into another dimension, impervious to any threat from the surrounding laws. Whoosh! Countless swords passed harmlessly through Yan Bei's form, leaving him unscathed. At that moment, he appeared as if he were an ethereal being, untouched by any force. Witnessing this, Li Shiyuan's expression shifted dramatically. His sword domain was utterly incapable of harming Yan Bei. How could this be? Likewise, Feng Zhutian and the wholly venerable outside were equally transfixed. Yan Bei's methods were so enigmatic that they could not discern their secrets. Yan Bei's gaze was now frosty. The Chaos Green Lotus had a time limit, and he needed to conclude this swiftly. Boom. At this moment, a terrifying golden radiance erupted from the life and death platform. The void trembled, revealing a fearsome golden hand that exuded an aura of dread. The hand of the Celestial. The instant the hand of the Celestial manifested, all the battle swords conjured by Li Shiyuan were instantly shattered into dust. His sword domain was forcibly breached by Yan Bei with overwhelming power. Freed from the constraints of the sword domain, Yan Bei's figure vanished in an instant. Li Shiyuan's expression changed dramatically. The dissolution of his sword domain threw him into disarray. Yet he quickly regained his composure. Having already transcended the mundane, what was there to fear from a mere Yan Bei? With this thought, he charged forward, his right fist gathering all his strength as it descended upon Yan Bei. Boom! A terrifying wave of energy erupted on the life and death platform. A figure shot out from the epicenter of the explosion. No, it should be said that he was blasted out by a single punch. Bang! With a dull thud, the figure collided violently against the barrier of the life and death platform. As the onlookers discerned the identity of the figure, their pupils constricted in disbelief. It was none other than Li Shiyuan. Despite being a transcendent, he had been sent flying by Yan Bei, who was merely a half-step transcendent. Countless gazes were filled with shock and horror as they fixed their eyes on the life and death platform. The Holy Sovereign's expression shifted dramatically, trembling in disbelief. How could this be? Li Shiyuan had failed to withstand Yan Bei's onslaught. In the center of the life and death platform stood a formidable chaotic silhouette, emanating an oppressive wave of energy that was suffocating. Chapter 149. Signing in during battle. The Emperor's fist Li Shiyuan struggled to rise from the ground, his face pale. At this moment, his entire right arm trembled. The bones of his right fist shattered from the recent clash. He had overreached. Li Shiyuan was a swordsman, most adept with his blade. However, he had recklessly engaged Yan Bei in a contest of raw strength, which was undeniably unwise. Yet this was also a consequence of his overwhelming confidence following his ascension to the transcendent realm. I am transcendent. How could I possibly be inferior to him? Li Shiyuan hissed with a grimace. Initially, he had been able to retaliate. Now, having broken through to the transcendent, he believed he could effortlessly subdue Yan Bei. Yet, reality proved to be merciless. His sword domain failed to inflict any harm on Yan Bei, ultimately being shattered. In their collision, it was he who faltered. Transcendent? It's not as if I haven't slain one before. Oh, I forgot to mention, Shui Haoyan of the moon-worshipping demonic sect was slain by my hand. Yan Bei chuckled coldly, his blood-red hair swirling wildly in the air, resembling a supreme demon lord, instilling terror in all. What? Li Shiyuan's expression shifted dramatically. The leader of the moon-worshipping demonic sect truly perished at Yan Bei's hands. At this moment, everyone from the Dian Holy Land was shaken. The moon-worshipping demonic sect was also a subordinate force of the Dian Holy Land, and as the sect leader, Shui Haoyin was certainly known to them. However, they had never imagined that the rumors from the eastern region were indeed true. The sect leader of the moon-worshipping sect had truly met his demise at the hands of Yin Bei. Upon hearing this, Li Shuyuan's complexion turned pale for an instant. He found himself regretting his decision to engage in the life-and-death arena with this monstrous Yin Bei. What means do you possess now? Yin Bei, treading upon the void, drew closer step by step, his presence shaking the heavens and the earth, while the crimson mark on his brow radiated with an overwhelming brilliance. In stark contrast, the blood-red symbol upon Li Shuyuan's forehead began to wane faintly. The life-and-death arena itself seemed to make judgments, and with Yin Bei's momentum soaring, Li Shuyuan's aura faltered, resulting in a shift in their respective marks. This heralded an impending tilt of victory towards one side. Li Shuyuan's expression grew exceedingly grave as Yin Bei continued to advance. An inexplicable sense of trepidation welled up within him. He was gripped by fear. No, I cannot resign myself to inaction. With a vigorous shake of his head, Li Shuyuan sought to dispel the dread from his heart, rallying his spirit. The oppressive force exerted by Yin Bei was truly daunting, instilling a trace of fear within his very soul. Such feelings were the most taboo during combat. Once he steadied his mind, Li Shuyuan resolutely withdrew the sacred sword embedded in the battle platform. He was prepared to engage earnestly. With the sword held aloft, he bellowed, "My heart is like a sword." Boom. It was as if something had erupted, and the heavens rumbled in response. A colossal luminous sword manifested above his head. The arena was engulfed in a tempest of sword intent, a formidable aura emanating from Li Shuyuan as his body gradually levitated, merging seamlessly with the radiant sword, becoming one with it. This was the unity of man and sword. The Taoist had achieved such a profound state at this tender age. Countless onlookers from the Dian sacred land shouted with exhilaration. The unity of man and sword represents an extraordinarily advanced level for sword cultivators. Typically, one must attain semi-saint status to reach this realm. Yet, Li Shuyuan comprehended this unity at the extraordinary level, a testament to his prodigious talent in the sword path. The notion of unity between man and sword was intriguing. I shall break through in battle whilst I sign in. I wonder what I might gain. From afar, Yin Bei felt the piercing sword aura radiating from Li Shuyuan, and a bold idea took root in his heart. He hadn't forgotten that he had yet to sign in today. If Li Shuyuan could achieve a breakthrough in battle, signing in should pose no hindrance. Tomato, sign in. Yin Bei murmured internally. Ding. Congratulations to the host on successful sign-in. Reward, Divine Technique, Heavenly Emperor Fist. The myriad details of the Heavenly Emperor Fist flooded into Yin Bei's consciousness. The Heavenly Emperor Fist. It is this martial art. A look of wild ecstasy spread across Yin Bei's face. He was no stranger to this technique. It was rumored to be an exalted martial art devised by an ancient heavenly emperor of the Yi clan. At that moment, Li Shuyuan, now merged with the luminous sword, bellowed, "The sword opens the heavenly gate." He was not inclined to continue stalemating with Yin Bei and took the initiative to strike. Boom. An unfathomably terrifying sword aura cleaved downward, splitting the void and creating a massive rift that was utterly fearsome. Yin Bei gazed at the descending luminous sword and thought, "Very well, let me use this to hone my skills." He initially intended to meticulously study the Heavenly Emperor Fist, but time was clearly not on his side. However, he found an opportune moment to practice against Li Shuyuan. A surge of battle intent ignited in Yin Bei's eyes as he instantly summoned his inner strength to its zenith. Boom. A stream of golden vitality pierced the heavens, causing the entire realm to tremble incessantly. In an instant, the very colors of the world shifted. Behind Yin Bei, a terrifying phantom coalesced, its immense and formidable presence instilling a profound sense of dread in all who beheld it. Heavenly Emperor Fist. Yin Bei roared fiercely. The phantom mirrored his movements, unleashing a resounding fist imprint that radiated a terrifying golden light, illuminating thousands of miles and enveloping the entirety of the Dian sacred land. Boom. The fist imprint collided with the radiant sword, and the two formidable energies caused the very void to collapse, echoing a sound akin to the heavens themselves shattering within the arena of life and death. A blinding light obscured all vision, rendering any glimpse into the arena's happenings impossible. Countless spectators held their breath. Crack. At that moment, a sudden crisp sound emanated from the arena of life and death. Upon hearing this, the people of the Dian sacred land abruptly changed their expressions. It was the sound of the sacred sword shattering. As the blinding light gradually dissipated, the true scene within was unveiled, presenting an unforgettable tableau to all present. Upon the arena of life and death stood two figures resembling clay sculptures. A trickle of blood dripped from the void, Yin Bei's countenance had paled, for a broken longsword had pierced his left chest, narrowly missing his heart. He remained poised in the act of striking, while before him lay the headless corpse of Li Shiyuan, his once fearsome visage now vanished, leaving only a lifeless body clutching the longsword. His head had been obliterated by a single punch. Chapter 150, The Climax of Battle. The rise of the Fire Phoenix in the arena of life and death. A headless corpse plummeted from the heights. Yin Bei reached out to withdraw the broken sword embedded in his chest, his face turning ashen. Just moments ago, in his dying struggle, Li Shiyuan had leveraged his exquisite swordsmanship to drive the broken sword into Yin Bei's body while he was enveloped in blinding light. Otherwise, Yin Bei would not have sustained injury. Fortunately, a golden vortex surged around him, and the wound began to heal at a visibly rapid pace. The Chaos Indestructible Sutra commenced its autonomous operation. Thunderous roars. The entire arena of life and death erupted in a dazzling radiance, and the energy that had sealed the battleground gradually diminished, transforming into formlessness. Thus, the life and death battle finally reached its conclusion. Li Shiyuan, the disciple of the Dian Sacred Land, had perished. The ultimate victor was Yin Bei. He had once again forged a miracle, slaying the already transcendent disciple of the Dian Sacred Land with but a half step into the extraordinary realm. Such a glorious achievement had not been attained by any soul over the course of millennia. Following this event, Yin Bei was destined to be etched into history, becoming the most remarkable prodigy of the Eastern Domain. Within the Dian Sacred Land, chaos had begun to ensue. At the moment the Holy Lord beheld the lifeless body of Li Shiyuan, a surge of rage overwhelmed him, prompting him to spew forth a mouthful of dark blood before collapsing. Dozens of elders from the Sacred Land glared at Yin Bei on the life and death stage with murderous intent, their desire to slay him on the spot palpable. Yet, they were paralyzed by fear, for a formidable figure loomed nearby, rendering their vengeance impossible to enact. "Oh, you clever lad," Feng Jiutian laughed heartily, clapping Yin Bei on the shoulder. "You have indeed defied the odds, vanquishing the extraordinary." Yin Bei's extraordinary feats left even him astounded. Such terrifying accomplishments were unparalleled in the Eastern Domain. With a lower cultivation base, he had boldly ascended against the odds, achieving what seemed a miraculous feat. "Senior, you jest." Yin Bei replied with a hint of bashfulness. "I merely capitalized on his weaknesses. I only exerted 60% of my strength, and who could have anticipated his fragility?" In this battle, Yin Bei had not even unleashed his full potential, with many lethal techniques remaining unused. Initially, he had perceived the struggle against the extraordinary as daunting, only to realize after the skirmish that it was not as formidable as it appeared. The members of the Dian Sacred Land, upon hearing Yin Bei's words, were instantly consumed by fury. Yet, none dared to step forth and challenge him. Feng Jiutian's expression shifted to one of astonishment. This youth's arrogance seemed excessive, claiming he had only exerted 60% of his strength. However, he chose not to press the matter further, merely chuckling. "Since that is the case, let us depart. It appears these timid tortoises dare not emerge." Feng Jiutian cast a disdainful glance at the Dian Sacred Land below, protected by an unparalleled formation. It could only be breached by a holy king. Thus, Feng Jiutian had no choice but to relent and refrain from entering. "Senior, wait a moment." Yin Bei suddenly recalled something and addressed Feng Jiutian. The latter looked on in confusion as Yin Bei turned and sprinted towards the life and death stage, proceeding to rummage through the headless corpse on the ground. He retrieved several valuable treasures and even stripped Li Shiyuan of his storage ring. This act of pillaging was executed with remarkable proficiency, clearly not Yin Bei's first experience in such matters. The members of the Dian Sacred Land were incensed, their faces turning ashen, yet they were powerless to retaliate in the presence of Feng Jiutian. The Dian Sacred Land, indeed one of the pinnacle forces in the Eastern Domain, displayed opulence beyond measure. Even a disciple bore 3 sacred artifacts, a sight that left Yin Bei in awe. With several vividly radiant weapons in hand, a broad smile adorned Yin Bei's face, and he kicked Li Shiyuan's corpse back towards the Sacred Land. Many disciples gazed at the headless body, their faces paling, while some female disciples began to retch. The elders of the Sacred Land seethed with rage, their teeth grinding in fury, their eyes fixed on Yin Bei with lethal intent. "Thank you for the generous gifts. The Dian Sacred Land truly embodies grandeur," Yin Bei remarked with a smile. Feng Jiutian wore a bitter smile, realizing that this young man would not rest until he had thoroughly exasperated the Dian Sacred Land. With a resounding clap, he shattered the fabric of space, revealing a spatial tunnel that extended to the Fire Phoenix Valley. "Come, today you shall take the lead, and upon our return, we shall celebrate your triumph." His laughter echoed across the skies of the Dian Sacred Land, casting a shadow over the faces of its inhabitants, who were engulfed in despair. For the first time in a millennium, someone dared to be so audacious at their doorstep. The disciples of the Dayan sacred land appeared disheartened. With their sacred sovereign gravely injured and unconscious, for semi-saints tragically perished, and the Daozi had fallen, alongside the loss of several sacred artifacts. The events of the day had dealt a grievous blow to their vitality. They could no longer compare themselves to the other two sacred lands. And the desolation of the Dayan sacred land had become irremediable. The following day, the fierce battle that erupted between the Fire Phoenix Valley and the Dayan sacred land swept through the eastern region like a tempest, leaving countless individuals in awe. The sacred sovereign was severely wounded, semi-saints had met their demise, the Daozi had fallen, and sacred artifacts were lost. Any single one of these occurrences would typically cause a stir, yet what was truly alarming was that this series of events had unfolded simultaneously within the Dayan sacred land. Soon after, the Dayan sacred land announced its closure for 5 years, causing trepidation among its affiliated powers. This anxiety stemmed from the news that the ancestor of the Fire Phoenix Valley, Feng Jiutian, had attained sanctity. Henceforth, the eastern region would boast an additional saint. The Fire Phoenix Valley emerged as the greatest beneficiary of this conflict, rivaling the other 3 sacred lands in both prestige and strength. Moreover, the remnants of the Ice Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, both of saintly caliber, resided within the valley, effectively granting them the equivalent of 2 saints, a feat unmatched by the other 3 sacred lands. From this battle, all understood that the dynamics of the eastern region were destined for monumental change. The era of the sacred lands wielding absolute power had drawn to a close, and the ascent of the Fire Phoenix Valley was unstoppable. Yan Bei, as a resplendent prodigy of the eastern region, saw his reputation soar once more due to the life and death battle, becoming a topic of conversation among cultivators. Through this conflict, Yan Bei emerged as the undisputed youth sovereign of the eastern region, unrivaled by his peers. Chapter 151. The Sacred City of the Eastern Region. Taichu Sacred Emperor Fire Phoenix Valley, Ice and Snow Sacred Hall, Attic. Yan Bei sat upon the rooftop, engrossed in his cultivation. Qi Ming rested her chin on her hand, quietly seated beside him, occasionally gracing him with a sweet smile. Time passed unmarked, until suddenly, a brilliant light erupted from within Yan Bei, illuminating him with a crystalline radiance, allowing one to glimpse his powerful heart. His entire being resembled a masterfully carved crystal, resplendent in its beauty. Once I successfully transcend my heart, I shall step into the extraordinary realm. Yan Bei exhaled a breath of lingering impurities and slowly opened his eyes. His entire body had completed the process of transcendence, leaving only the crucial heart. Once he achieved the same with it, he would shatter his shackles and ascend to the extraordinary. In comparison to you, my goddess of the Fire Phoenix Valley pales in insignificance. Qi Ming playfully stuck out her tongue, akin to a little kitten nestling into Yan Bei's embrace. Since awakening her ice soul profound body, her cultivation had surged remarkably, reaching the first level of the Divine Palace realm. However, despite this commendable achievement, it paled in comparison to Yan Bei's prowess. With a wry smile, Yan Bei shook his head. Indeed, his cultivation rendered him invincible among the younger generation. Yet, the adversaries he faced were formidable ancient beings, including those of the saint-level caliber. It was evident that even if he were to step into the extraordinary realm, it might still prove insufficient. To truly attain unrivaled supremacy in the Eastern domain, he needed to reach the Saint realm. He was confident that the day he ascended to that level, unless a Saint King emerged, no one in the entire Eastern domain would pose a challenge to him. The following day, the Fire Phoenix Valley remained tranquil, with disciples engrossed in their own affairs. In stark contrast, the outside world was in tumult. Just moments ago, a beam of holy light had cleaved through the sky, its terrifying might shaking heaven and earth, as if an emperor had made an appearance, radiating overwhelming pressure. It was Feng Jiutian, stepping out of the Fire Phoenix Valley once more, heading towards the location of the Holy City in the Eastern Domain. The Holy City was the most enigmatic place in the entire Eastern Domain, although it appeared as a mere city. It was teeming with a plethora of cultivators from all walks of life. Any notable figure or force in the Eastern Domain had established a foothold within its walls. This city served as the nucleus of communication throughout the Eastern Domain. Any shift in the winds would instantly be relayed to those with a presence in the Holy City. Boom. Above the Holy City, the sky fractured with a resounding crash, and a terrifying figure emerged from the rupture, its aura suppressing the realms, causing all cultivators within the Holy City to tremble. A saint had descended. What is this? The cultivators in the Holy City were momentarily bewildered, gazing in shock at the figure above. At that moment, several powerful auras erupted from the Fire Phoenix Valley stronghold in the Holy City. A group soared forth, landing